The first thing I learned about cruelty was that it rarely announces itself as cruelty. Sometimes it walks into a classroom wearing a varsity jacket, sometimes it smiles while everyone else laughs, and sometimes it changes your life so quietly that years later, even after you have money, power, a corner office, and your name on the front door of a company, you still hear that laughter when the room gets too silent. My name is Natalie Brooks. At 34 years old, I was the founder and CEO of Brooks & Lane Creative, a marketing and brand strategy firm based in downtown Chicago. We worked with tech companies, retail brands, nonprofit organizations, and occasionally the kind of impossible clients who believed a logo redesign could fix a decade of bad decisions. From the outside, my life looked polished. Glass office, tailored suits, speaking invitations, magazine interviews, employees who called me inspiring in company surveys, but nobody saw the girl I used to be. Nobody saw 17-year-old Natalie Brooks sitting alone in the Westfield High School cafeteria, pretending to read a library book, while secretly counting how many minutes were left before lunch ended. Nobody saw the girl who kept her head down because eye contact felt dangerous. Nobody saw the girl who learned to walk fast through hallways, not because she was late, but because slowing down meant giving people time to notice her. That girl was still somewhere inside me. I had just become very good at hiding her. That morning, Chicago was covered in a thin layer of snow. The city looked clean from my office window, almost gentle, as if the cold had softened all the sharp edges. Below, cars moved slowly through the gray streets. People hurried across crosswalks with coffee cups in their hands and scarves pulled up to their noses. Inside my office, everything was warm and still. My desk was clear except for a silver laptop, a ceramic mug of black coffee, and a neat stack of candidate folders. We were hiring a senior account manager, someone who could handle several major clients as the company expanded. The position mattered. Whoever took it would have direct influence over a team of younger employees. And I cared deeply about who got that kind of influence, because I knew exactly what happened when the wrong kind of person was given power. A soft knock came at my door. "Come in," I said. Maya Thompson stepped inside, carrying another folder against her chest. Maya was my executive assistant, though that title never felt big enough for what she actually did. She was organized, sharp, and impossible to intimidate. At 28, she had the calm confidence of someone who noticed everything and wasted words on nothing. "Final interview list," she said, placing the folder on my desk. "Rachel narrowed it down to 4 candidates. You said you wanted to review them personally." "I did, thank you." Maya lingered for a second. "Big position," she said. I smiled faintly. "That's why I'm reading every page." She nodded, then left the room. I opened the folder. The first candidate had 10 years of experience in client relations. Strong background, clean references, predictable answers. The second had worked for a startup that collapsed after a funding scandal. Interesting, but risky. The third had less experience, but a thoughtful cover letter. Then I turned to the fourth resume, and my hand stopped. For a moment, I simply stared at the name. The letters sat there in clean black ink, harmless and professional. But my body reacted before my mind did. My fingers tightened around the edge of the paper. My throat went dry. The quiet office seemed to tilt just slightly, as if the floor beneath me had shifted. Ethan Miller. I had not said his name out loud in years. I had not needed to. Some names become locked rooms inside you. You do not open them. You do not even stand too close to the door. But now his name was on my desk, applying for a job at my company. I looked at the resume again, forcing myself to read. Former sales director, account executive, client retention specialist, several short-term roles, a few impressive numbers, a few suspicious gaps. There was a small photo attached to his LinkedIn profile printout. Older, of course, broader face, less boyish. The confident grin was still there, but it looked thinner now, stretched over something tired. Still, I knew him immediately. My chest tightened, and suddenly I was not in my Chicago office anymore. I was back in Westfield High School, 17 years old, wearing a brown coat with a broken zipper, holding a lunch tray, trying not to be seen. Westfield High was the kind of school that liked to pretend it treated everyone equally. Posters about kindness hung in the hallways. Teachers gave speeches about respect. The principal smiled during morning announcements and said things like, "We are a family here." But families have favorites. And at Westfield, Ethan Miller was everyone's favorite. He was the quarterback of the football team, the boy teachers forgave before he apologized, the boy girls watched from across the cafeteria, the boy other boys copied because being near him made them feel important. Ethan moved through school like the building belonged to him. I moved through it like I was trespassing. My mother and I lived in a small apartment 15 minutes from campus. She worked as a receptionist at a dental office during the day and picked up evening shifts at a grocery store when bills got tight, which was almost always. She loved me fiercely, but love did not buy new shoes. Love did not make rent cheaper. Love did not stop teenagers from noticing when your backpack was patched with duct tape. Ethan noticed everything. The first time he called me discount girl, I was standing at my locker before second period. I had just pulled out my chemistry book when his voice came from behind me. "Nice jacket, Brooks. Did it come with a coupon?" His friends laughed. I froze with my hand still inside my locker. Ethan leaned against the locker beside mine, smiling as if he had just done me a favor by acknowledging my existence. "No, seriously," he continued. "My mom donates clothes every Christmas. I'm pretty sure I saw that coat in a charity bin." More laughter. I remember the smell of metal from the locker door. I remember the way my face burned. I remember trying to think of something clever to say, something sharp enough to protect me. Nothing came, so I closed my locker and walked away. That was all it took. By lunch, half the junior class was calling me discount girl. At first, I told myself it would pass. Teenagers got bored. They found new targets, new jokes, new scandals. I just had to survive a week or two. But Ethan had a talent for making cruelty entertaining. In the cafeteria, he would glance at my lunch and say, "What's the menu today, Brooks? Sad sandwich with a side of poverty?" In English class, if I raised my hand, he would whisper loudly, "Careful, everyone. Discount girl has premium thoughts." During group projects, he made sure I was either ignored or blamed. And the worst part was not always what he said. It was how easily everyone accepted it. People who had never spoken to me suddenly felt allowed to laugh at me. People who probably did not hate me joined in because Ethan made it safe. He gave them permission. That was the thing about popular cruelty. It turned ordinary people into an audience. I learned to make myself smaller. I stopped eating lunch in the cafeteria and started eating in the library when the librarian was kind enough to pretend not to notice. I stopped raising my hand. I stopped wearing anything that might attract attention. I checked my locker twice before opening it because once Ethan's friends had filled it with discount store flyers. At night, my mother would ask, "How was school, honey?" And I would say, "Fine." Because what else could I say? That I felt like I was disappearing? That every morning I woke up with a stone in my stomach? That sometimes I stood in the bathroom stall between classes and pressed my palms against my eyes until the tears went back where they came from? My mother was already exhausted. I could not hand her my pain on top of everything else, so I swallowed it day after day. Until the science presentation. That presentation was supposed to be my way out. Our school had partnered with a local university for a summer scholarship program. One student would be chosen to attend a 6-week science and technology camp, fully funded. For most students at Westfield, it was just another opportunity. For me, it felt like a door. I spent 5 weeks preparing. I built my project around environmental data tracking and urban air pollution. It was not flashy, but it was careful. I borrowed books from the library. I stayed late after school to use the computer lab. I practiced my speech in front of my bedroom mirror until my voice stopped shaking. My chemistry teacher, Mr. Collins, told me I had a real chance. "You're prepared, Natalie," he said. "Just speak clearly. Let them see how much work you've done." For the first time in a long time, I let myself feel hopeful. The presentation took place in the auditorium on a Friday morning. Juniors and seniors filled the seats. A few teachers sat in the front row. 3 representatives from the university were there with clipboards. I remember standing backstage with my flash drive in my hand, trying to breathe slowly. "You can do this," I told myself. "You worked for this. You belong here." Then my name was called. I walked onto the stage. The lights were too bright. The microphone looked too tall. I could see Ethan in the back row, leaning lazily in his seat with his football friends around him. I looked away from him. I plugged in my flash drive. My first slide appeared on the big screen. Except it was not my slide. It was a photo of me. A photo someone had taken without my knowing, while I was sitting alone in the cafeteria with my book open and my lunch beside me. The image had been edited. My face was distorted. My clothes were circled with red arrows. Across the top in large ugly letters were the words, "For 1 second, there was silence." Then the auditorium exploded. Laughter hit me from every direction, not small laughter, not a few whispers, hundreds of voices, pointing, clapping, howling. My ears rang, my fingers went numb. I reached for the keyboard, trying to change the slide, but the next one was worse. Another edited image, another cruel caption, then another. Someone shouted, "Discount girl!" More laughter. I looked toward the back row. Ethan Miller was laughing so hard he had one hand over his mouth. And in that moment, something inside me broke very quietly. I did not run off the stage. I wish I had. Running would have been easier to remember. Instead, I stood there, frozen, humiliated, unable to speak. Mr. Collins hurried up and shut down the projector, but it was too late. The representatives from the university looked uncomfortable. The principal took the microphone and told everyone to settle down, which only made the laughter ripple longer. I remember walking off stage without feeling my legs. I remember locking myself in a bathroom stall. I remember biting my sleeve so nobody would hear me cry. The scholarship went to someone else. No one was punished. The school said there was no proof Ethan had done it. The computer lab had too many students coming and going. My flash drive could have been accessed by anyone. Maybe they suggested I had accidentally downloaded the wrong file. Maybe I should have been more careful. Ethan walked past me the next Monday and said, "Relax, Brooks. I made your presentation memorable." His friends laughed. I said nothing. But I remembered. I remembered every face, every sound, every adult who looked away because dealing with the truth would have been inconvenient. Years passed. I graduated. I worked 2 jobs through college. I built a career from internships, late nights, unpaid favors, and stubbornness. I learned to speak in rooms full of executives. I learned to negotiate contracts with men who underestimated me. I learned to wear confidence like armor. Eventually, I started my own company. Brooks & Lane Creative began in a rented co-working space with 3 clients and 1 folding table. Now we had 2 floors downtown, 47 employees, and a reputation for turning struggling brands into success stories. People sometimes asked what made our company culture different. I always gave the same answer. We hire for talent, but we promote for character. What I never said was that I had built the company around the opposite of Ethan Miller. No public humiliation disguised as humor. No stealing credit. No making quiet people feel invisible. No leaders who confused fear with respect. On the wall outside our main conference room, in large black letters, was our company motto. Employees loved it. Clients commented on it. But for me, it was not a slogan. It was a promise. A knock on the door pulled me back to the present. Maya stepped in again. "Sorry," she said. "Rachel wants to know if you've approved the final interview schedule." I looked down at Ethan's resume. For a moment, I considered sliding it into the rejection pile. It would have been easy. 1 email from HR. "Thank you for your interest, but we've decided to move forward with other candidates." Clean, professional, safe. He would never know. Part of me wanted that. Another part of me, the part that still remembered standing on that stage, wanted something sharper. I wanted him to walk into my office and realize exactly whose door he had knocked on. I wanted him to feel small. Just once. The thought came so quickly that it scared me, because I had spent years telling myself I was not like Ethan. I had built an entire company on that belief. So what did it mean if power finally found its way into my hands, and the first thing I wanted to do was use it the way he had? Maya watched me carefully. "Natalie?" she asked. "Are you okay?" I closed the folder. "Yes." She glanced at the name on top. "You know him?" I kept my voice even. "I knew him a long time ago." "Good history or bad history?" I looked out the window. Snow continued falling over Chicago, soft and silent, covering the streets like the city was trying to hide everything ugly beneath a clean white sheet. "Complicated," I said. Maya waited. I turned back to the folder. Ethan Miller wanted a job. Ethan Miller wanted to lead people. Ethan Miller wanted to walk into my company and be trusted with authority over others. The girl I used to be would have hidden from him. The woman I had become picked up a pen and wrote 1 word beside his name. Maya raised her eyebrows. "You're moving him forward?" "Yes," I said. She studied my face. "Are you sure?" No, I was not sure at all. But I knew one thing. I was not going to reject Ethan Miller from behind a desk without looking him in the eyes. Not because I owed him fairness, but because I owed myself the chance to see whether the boy who had once destroyed my voice had become a man capable of hearing it. "Schedule him for Thursday," I said. Maya nodded slowly. "Okay." After she left, I sat alone in my office with Ethan's resume in front of me. For 17 years, I had imagined what I would say if I ever saw him again. In some versions, I screamed. In others, I exposed him. Sometimes I simply walked past him like he was nothing. But life rarely gives you the scene you rehearsed. Instead, it gives you a resume, a conference room, a job interview, and the terrifying realization that the person who hurt you most is about to ask you for mercy without even knowing your name is on the door. I touched the edge of the folder and whispered to the empty office, "Let's see who you became, Ethan." Then I turned off the desk lamp, stood up, and walked toward the conference room where my team was waiting. Behind me on the wall, the company motto caught the winter light. For the first time in years, those words felt less like a promise, and more like a test. Thursday morning arrived colder than expected. The snow from earlier in the week had hardened along the sidewalks, turning into gray ridges beside the streets of downtown Chicago. The sky was pale and heavy, the kind of winter sky that made even glass buildings look tired. I got to the office before everyone else. That was not unusual. I liked the quiet before the phones started ringing, before the elevators opened, before the office filled with voices and coffee machines and calendar reminders. In those early hours, Brooks & Lane Creative felt less like a company and more like a promise I was still building with my own hands. But that morning, the quiet did not comfort me. It pressed against me, because Ethan Miller was coming in at 10. I stood in front of the conference room window, holding a cup of coffee I had barely touched. Below me, people moved through the city in dark coats and winter boots, unaware that 17 years of buried humiliation were about to walk into my building wearing a suit. I had told myself all week that this was just an interview, a professional process, a hiring decision, nothing more. But the truth was, I had checked Ethan's resume more times than necessary. I had reread his employment history, searched for gaps, examined his references, studied the carefully polished language in his cover letter. I'm passionate about building strong client relationships. I believe leadership is about communication. I thrive in collaborative environments. The words look good, That was the problem. Cruel people could learn the right words. Some of them became very good at using them. At 8:15, Maya entered my office with her tablet in one hand and a paper cup of tea in the other. "You're here early," she said. "So are you." "I'm always early when you're pretending not to be stressed." I looked at her. She gave me a small smile. "It's one of my hidden talents." I sat down behind my desk. "I'm fine." "No, you're functional. Different thing." I almost laughed, but the sound got stuck somewhere in my chest. Maya closed the door behind her. Her expression softened. "Do you want me to ask Rachel to handle this interview instead?" For one second, I wanted to say yes. I wanted to hand the entire situation to HR, go into another meeting, and let Ethan Miller be processed like any other candidate. I wanted the clean distance of policy and paperwork, but that would not have been honesty. And if my company had taught me anything, it was that avoiding hard conversations only allowed old damage to keep breathing in the dark. "No," I said. "I'll do it." Maya nodded, but she did not leave. "Natalie," she said carefully, "I don't know what happened between you two, and you don't have to tell me, but if this is going to hurt you..." It already did. The words came out before I could stop them. Maya grew still. I looked down at the resume on my desk. "That's why I need to know who he is now." Maya did not ask another question. She simply nodded once, like she understood that some doors had to be opened by the person who had spent years locking them. "Okay," she said, "then we do it right." "We do it right," I repeated. By 9:50, the office was awake. Phones rang softly. Employees moved between conference rooms. Someone laughed near the break area. The scent of coffee and printer toner drifted through the hallway. From my office, I could see the reception area through the glass wall. At exactly 9:56, Ethan Miller walked in. I knew it was him before Maya turned her head. Some people carry their past selves in their posture. Ethan did. Not completely. Not as boldly as he once had, but enough. His shoulders were still squared in that familiar way, like he expected space to make room for him. He wore a navy suit that looked expensive once, but slightly worn now. His tie was conservative. His shoes had been polished, though the leather near the sole was beginning to crease. He looked older. Of course he did. There were lines around his eyes now. His jaw was heavier. His hair, once golden brown and deliberately messy in the way popular boys could get away with, was cut short and neat. The old confidence was still there, but it had been damaged, not destroyed, just cracked. He smiled at the receptionist, not warmly, strategically. "Good morning," he said. "Ethan Miller. I'm here for the senior account manager interview." The receptionist checked the schedule. "Of course, Mr. Miller. Please have a seat. Someone will be with you shortly." He thanked her and turned toward the waiting area. That was when he saw the wall. Every candidate saw it eventually. The black letters near the main hallway. Ethan paused. His eyes moved over the words. Something like amusement flickered across his face. It was subtle, almost nothing, but I saw it. A tiny lift at the corner of his mouth. As if kindness was a nice decoration for people who had never been in a real fight. My fingers tightened around my coffee cup. Maya appeared near reception with a folder in her hand. "Mr. Miller?" she said. Ethan stood. "Yes. I'm Maya Thompson, executive assistant to Natalie Brooks. Thank you for coming in." His smile sharpened. "Happy to be here." As Maya led him toward the interview rooms, another candidate entered the reception area. I recognized him from the resume stack. Daniel Price. He was in his early 30s, tall but slightly hunched, with nervous eyes and a folder clutched too tightly in one hand. Daniel walked quickly, probably afraid he was late, and bumped his elbow against the reception desk. His folder slipped from his hand. Papers scattered across the floor. "Oh, sorry," Daniel muttered, dropping to his knees. A few pages slid near Ethan's shoes. Ethan looked down. For a moment he did nothing. Then he shifted his foot back slightly, not to help, but to keep the papers from touching his shoe. Daniel reached for the pages himself. Maya noticed. So did I. Ethan gave Daniel a polite smile, the kind people offer when they want credit for being civil without being useful. "Rough morning," Ethan said. Daniel forced a small laugh. "Something like that." Maya bent down and picked up 2 pages. "Here you go," she said. Daniel looked grateful. "Thank you." Ethan glanced at his watch. That small moment should not have mattered. But it did. Because character often revealed itself before the formal questions began. Maya led Ethan down the hall toward conference room A. I watched him pass framed photos from company retreats, client award ceremonies, volunteer events, and employee appreciation days. He looked around with interest. Maybe admiration. Maybe calculation. He had no idea yet that he was walking through the life I built from the ruins of the girl he helped break. I waited another minute before leaving my office. Not because I wanted dramatic timing. Because I needed to breathe. When I reached the conference room, Rachel Adams was already inside. Rachel, our HR director, sat with her laptop open and a legal pad beside her. She knew nothing about Ethan beyond the standard background notes. I had chosen not to tell her about high school. Not yet. I wanted this interview to begin fairly, even if fairness felt like swallowing glass. Ethan was seated at the far side of the table, his back straight, his hands folded. When I entered, he looked up with the automatic confidence of someone prepared to impress. Then his face changed. Not dramatically. Not like in movies. There was no gasp, no chair scraping backward, no sudden apology. Just a flicker. His eyes narrowed slightly. His smile froze halfway. His mind reached backward, sorting through memory, age, face, name. Maya stood near the door. "Mr. Miller," she said, "this is Natalie Brooks, founder and CEO of Brooks & Lane Creative." The room went very quiet. Ethan stared at me. For 2 seconds I watched him try to place me. Then he did. "Natalie," he said slowly. I smiled, not warmly, professionally. "Hello, Ethan." His throat moved as he swallowed. "Wow," he said. I didn't realize." "No? No. I mean, I saw Brooks, obviously, but I didn't—" He laughed once, a short, nervous sound. I guess I didn't connect it. Of course he hadn't. People like Ethan rarely expected the people they stepped on to end up above them. "Please," I said, gesturing to the chair, "have a seat." He sat. I took the chair across from him. Rachel looked between us, instantly aware that something unspoken had entered the room. Maya remained standing near the wall with her tablet. I opened his resume. For a few seconds I let silence settle. Ethan filled it. "So," he said, smiling again, "this is an impressive place. Really impressive. Congratulations." "Thank you." "I mean it. Building something like this from scratch?" He leaned back slightly, trying to recover his old ease. "That's not easy." "No," I said. "It isn't." His smile faded just a little. Rachel cleared her throat. "Mr. Miller, we appreciate you coming in. We'll begin with your recent experience, then move into leadership scenarios and client management." Sounds great. He was good at interviews. I could tell within the first 5 minutes. He knew when to nod, when to lean forward, when to make eye contact. He used polished phrases and gave examples with numbers attached. "At Drake & Monroe, I managed a portfolio worth roughly $8 million annually. I improved client retention by 15% over 2 quarters. I'm comfortable working under pressure and managing difficult personalities." Difficult personalities. I wrote that phrase down. Not because it impressed me, because I wondered whether in Ethan's mind a difficult personality was anyone who failed to obey him quickly enough. Rachel asked, "How would your previous team describe your leadership style?" Ethan smiled. "Direct, motivating, results-oriented." I looked up. "Would they describe you as kind?" The question landed harder than I expected. Ethan blinked. Rachel glanced at me. Maya's eyes lifted from her tablet. Ethan adjusted his cuff. "I would hope so," he said. "That's not quite an answer." He gave a careful smile. "Kindness can mean different things in business. Tell me what it means to you." He paused, choosing his words. "Respect, professionalism, giving people the tools they need to succeed. Does kindness include patience? Of course. Does it include listening to someone whose idea may not sound strong at first? Yes. Does it include not humiliating someone when they make a mistake?" The air changed. Ethan's eyes stayed on mine, but something tightened behind them. He knew. Maybe not fully, not yet, but he knew this was no longer an ordinary interview question. "Yes," he said quietly. "It includes that." I nodded and looked back down at the resume. "Good." Rachel continued with standard questions, and Ethan answered them well enough, but his confidence had shifted. He was no longer performing for the room. He was watching me now, trying to understand how much of the past I had carried into the present. The answer was simple. All of it, but not in the way he feared. I did not want revenge. At least, that was what I kept telling myself. Rachel asked, "Can you explain the gap between your last 2 positions?" Ethan sat straighter. "Personal matters, family transition." "Could you clarify?" Rachel asked. "My divorce," he said. "It was a difficult period." There it was, a crack in the polished surface. I glanced at the notes from his background check. Divorced, 1 child, some financial instability, a previous employer willing to confirm dates but unwilling to provide a detailed recommendation. "I'm sorry to hear that," Rachel said. Ethan nodded. "Thank you, but it's behind me now. I'm ready to rebuild." Rebuild. The word stayed with me. I knew something about rebuilding. But rebuilding required acknowledging what had been destroyed. I asked, "Why did you leave your most recent company?" He looked at me, then at Rachel. "Restructuring." Rachel typed something. I turned 1 page in the folder. "That's interesting," I said, "because your former manager confirmed the department was not restructured." Ethan went still. Only for a second. Then he smiled. "Right, I should have phrased that better. There were internal changes. The role shifted." "How did it shift?" He exhaled through his nose. "There were disagreements about management style." "Whose management style?" His jaw tightened. "Mine." Rachel stopped typing. Maya looked up again. I waited. Ethan seemed to realize that polished language would not carry him through this room. "My manager felt I was too aggressive with junior staff," he said. "And were you?" He looked at me. The old Ethan might have laughed. The old Ethan might have made a joke at someone else's expense. This Ethan hesitated. "I was under pressure," he said. "We had demanding clients, tight deadlines. I expected people to keep up." "That still doesn't answer the question." His fingers tapped once against the table before he stopped himself. I pushed hard. "Did people improve?" "Some did. And the ones who didn't?" He leaned back. "Not everyone is built for high-pressure work." The sentence was calm, reasonable even, but I heard the echo beneath it. Not everyone is built to survive. Not everyone deserves protection. Some people break because they are weak. I felt 17-year-old Natalie stir inside me, small and silent and watching. I kept my voice steady. At Brooks and Lane, pressure is not an excuse for disrespect. We work hard, but we don't sacrifice people to prove that work matters. Ethan gave a quick nod. Of course, I respect that. Do you? His eyes met mine. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Rachel shifted slightly in her chair. She could feel the history now, even if she did not know its shape. Ethan lowered his voice. Natalie, if this is about high school. Rachel's eyes moved sharply toward him. Maya went completely still. I closed the folder. There it is, I said. Ethan realized too late that he had opened the door himself. He tried to smile, but it failed halfway. I just mean we knew each other back then, a long time ago. Yes, I said, we did. He rubbed his thumb across one knuckle. Look, I know I wasn't always mature. Mature. The word tasted bitter. That's one way to describe it. He gave a small, helpless laugh. We were kids. No, I said, we were teenagers, old enough to know when someone was crying. His face changed. Not regret. Not yet. Discomfort. There is a difference. Rachel looked at me, then at him. I knew I was stepping close to the edge of what belonged in an interview. But I also knew this position required leadership, and leadership required character. If Ethan's past behavior had been childish cruelty only, perhaps it would not matter. But his answers today suggested that the pattern had survived into adulthood, polished and renamed as pressure. I folded my hands on the table. Mr. Miller, this role would put you in charge of younger employees. Some of them are quiet. Some are still learning to trust their own voices. Some come from backgrounds where they have had to fight harder just to be taken seriously. He looked away. I continued. So I need to know whether you understand the difference between challenging someone and diminishing them. Ethan looked back at me. I do. Then explain it. He inhaled. Challenging someone means pushing them to do better. Diminishing them means making them feel incapable. And have you ever diminished someone? He did not answer quickly. Good, I thought. At least he knew a quick answer would sound false. Finally, he said, Probably. I almost smiled, not because it was funny, because even now he was negotiating with the truth. Probably, I repeated. He looked frustrated. What do you want me to say? The truth. His eyes hardened slightly. There he was, not gone, just older. The truth is, he said, I've made mistakes. Everyone has, but I'm here for a job interview, not a trial. Rachel's fingers paused above the keyboard. Maya's expression became unreadable. I felt something hot rise in my chest, but I did not let it reach my voice. You're right, I said, this is not a trial. Ethan relaxed by half an inch. Then I added, it's an assessment. His relaxation disappeared. I opened the folder again. Your technical experience is strong. Your client numbers are solid. But leadership here is not based only on performance. We evaluate how candidates affect the people around them. I understand. I'm not sure you do. His eyes flickered. I turned to Rachel. Do we have the group exercise scheduled for tomorrow? Rachel recovered quickly. Yes, 10 a.m., final round candidates. Client crisis simulation. I looked back at Ethan. I'd like you to participate. He seemed surprised. You're moving me to the final round? I'm giving you the opportunity to show us how you work with others. He studied my face, trying to decide whether this was mercy or a trap. Maybe it was both. That sounds fair, he said. Fairness matters here. He nodded. Yes, of course. The interview ended a few minutes later. Ethan stood and extended his hand. I looked at it. For one split second, I saw his younger hand holding court in the cafeteria, pointing at my coat, turning me into a joke. I saw that same hand clapping in the auditorium while hundreds of students laughed at me. Then I stood and shook it. His grip was firm, mine was firmer. Thank you for coming in, I said. Thank you for considering me. He held my gaze a beat too long. There was a question there. How much do you remember? I released his hand. All of it, Ethan. I remember all of it. Maya walked him out. Through the glass, I watched him pass the motto again. This time, he did not smirk. He stared at the words for a moment, then looked away. When the elevator doors closed behind him, Rachel turned to me. Natalie, she said carefully, do we need to talk about conflict of interest? I sat down. Yes. Maya returned just as I answered. Rachel closed her laptop halfway. What happened in high school? The question was gentle, but it still landed heavily. I could have given a professional summary. I could have said he was unkind. I could have said we had history. Instead, I told them, not everything, but enough. I told them about the nickname, the cafeteria, the hallway jokes, the presentation, the scholarship I lost, the way adults had looked away because Ethan was popular and I was easy to ignore. Maya's face tightened as I spoke. Rachel looked horrified. When I finished, the room was silent. Maya said, why are we still interviewing him? It was not a challenge. It was protection. I appreciated it more than she knew. Because rejecting him based only on who he was at 17 might feel satisfying, I said. But I need to know who he is now. Rachel frowned. And if who he is now is the same, then we'll know. Maya crossed her arms. And if he has changed? I looked at the closed folder. Then we'll know that too. But later, alone in my office, I wondered whether I was being wise or foolish. There was a thin line between giving someone a fair chance and giving them another opportunity to do harm. I had spent my adult life building a workplace where people like young Natalie could speak without fear. If I hired Ethan and he hurt someone here, that would not be forgiveness. That would be failure. My failure. At 6:30, most of the office had emptied. The city outside had gone dark. Reflections of desk lamps glowed against the windows like small floating fires. I opened Ethan's resume one more time. His name no longer looked like a ghost from the past. It looked like a question. Had he changed? Or had life only humbled him enough to make him better at pretending? My phone buzzed. A message from Maya. I stared at the text for a long moment. Such a small thing, a few papers on the floor, a moment when nobody important was supposed to be watching. But maybe that was exactly where truth lived, not in polished answers, not in resumes, not in carefully practiced apologies. Truth lived in the instinct to help or not help when helping offered no reward. I set the phone down and looked toward the hallway, where the motto on the wall was barely visible in the dim office light. Kindness matters more. Tomorrow, Ethan Miller would walk into a room with other candidates. No history, no private conversation, no direct confrontation. Just teamwork, just pressure, just people he could either lift up or make smaller. And for the first time since high school, I would not be the girl trapped beneath his cruelty. I would be the one watching. Not with revenge, not with mercy, with clarity. I closed the folder and whispered to myself, show me who you are when you think power is still yours. Then I turned off the light. The next morning, I arrived at the office with a headache sitting behind my eyes. I told myself it was from lack of sleep. That was partly true. I had slept badly, waking up 3 different times from the same unfinished dream. In it, I was standing on the auditorium stage at Westfield High School again. The lights were too bright. The laughter was too loud. My hands would not move fast enough to close the presentation. But this time, when I looked into the audience, Ethan Miller was not 17. He was the man from the interview room. Older, tired, desperate, and somehow that made the dream worse. Because it was easier to hate a memory than a person sitting across from you with a worn suit, financial trouble, and a daughter he had mentioned only once. By 9:30, Conference Room B had been rearranged for the final round exercise. Rachel and Maya had prepared everything. Candidate packets, notepads, pens, printed client briefs, scoring sheets, and a large screen showing the name of the simulation. The Halden group was fictional, but the situation was not. We had built the exercise from real problems companies faced every day. A major client was furious after a campaign underperformed. Their launch numbers were below target. Their board was asking questions. Their internal marketing team felt blamed. The budget might be cut. The client wanted answers by Monday. The candidates had 90 minutes to work together and present a recovery strategy. They would not be judged only on the final solution. They would be judged on how they listened, how they disagreed, how they handled pressure, how they treated the quietest person in the room. Because leadership was never just what someone did when everyone admired them. Leadership was what they did when they felt threatened. At 9:55, the 4 candidates arrived. Ethan came in first. He wore the same navy suit from the day before, but a different tie. His face looked more controlled, as if he had spent the morning reminding himself not to react. He nodded politely to Maya, then to Rachel, then briefly toward me. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning," I replied. He did not smile too widely this time. Daniel Price came in next, holding his folder carefully with both hands. His shirt collar sat slightly unevenly beneath his jacket, and he looked like a man trying very hard not to look nervous. Behind him was Sophia Reed, a senior strategist from a smaller agency in Milwaukee. She had sharp eyes, calm posture, and the kind of confidence that did not need volume. Her resume was excellent. She had led nonprofit campaigns, crisis communications projects, and a rebrand for a regional hospital network. The last candidate was Marcus Hill, a former client success manager from a software company. Friendly, polished, quick with a handshake. Rachel welcomed them. "Thank you all for coming in. Today's exercise is designed to show us how you collaborate under pressure. You'll receive a client brief, review the situation together, and present a 15-minute recovery plan." She paused. "We are not only evaluating your ideas, we are evaluating your process." I stood near the far end of the room. "For this role, you will be asked to manage people as much as accounts," I added. "So pay attention to how you make space for each other. At Brooks and Lane, the loudest voice in the room is not automatically the strongest." Ethan's eyes flickered toward me, only for a moment, but I saw it. Rachel handed out the packets. "We'll step out now. You'll have 90 minutes. We'll observe from the adjacent room." The candidates nodded. Maya, Rachel, and I left Conference Room B and entered the observation room next door. The glass between the rooms was tinted from their side, giving us a clear view without making the candidates feel watched every second. There were cameras and microphones too, standard for final leadership assessments. Every candidate had signed consent forms. Still, as I sat down and put on my headset, I felt a strange twist in my stomach. 17 years ago, Ethan had turned my public presentation into a spectacle. Now I was watching him perform, and I hated how much part of me wanted him to fail. The exercise began calmly. Sophia opened the packet and said, maybe we should take the first 10 minutes just to identify the core problem before jumping into solutions. Daniel nodded. That makes sense. The client is angry, but we need to know whether the issue is performance, communication, expectations, or all three. Marcus added, and we should separate what we tell the client from what we fix internally. Ethan leaned back slightly, scanning the brief faster than the others. I've handled situations like this before, he said. The key is control. You don't let an angry client drive the conversation. Sophia looked at him. Agreed, but we still need to understand what went wrong. Sure, Ethan said, but we don't have 90 minutes to overanalyze. The campaign missed numbers, the client is upset. We need a retention plan. Daniel glanced down at his notes. I think overanalyze might be a little strong. We're just trying to diagnose. Ethan cut in. Right, but diagnostics don't mean much if the client walks. Daniel closed his mouth. In the observation room, Maya wrote something on her tablet. Rachel glanced at me. I kept my face still. On paper, Ethan had not done anything terrible. Not yet. He had interrupted. Yes, he had pushed, yes, but many candidates did that under pressure. Many leaders had to learn the difference between decisiveness and domination. I told myself to keep watching. Sophia tried to redirect the conversation. Okay, why don't we divide this into 3 categories? Client communication, internal review, and campaign adjustment. Good, Marcus said. Daniel leaned forward. For internal review, I'd include a no-blame audit. If the team feels attacked, they may hide information. Sophia nodded. That's important. Ethan tapped his pen. No-blame audit sounds soft. Daniel looked at him. Soft? I'm not saying attack people, Ethan said. But if someone made a mistake, we need to know who and why. Sophia replied evenly. Knowing what happened isn't the same as assigning blame in the first meeting. Ethan gave a small smile. Sure, but clients don't pay us to protect feelings. The words were not shouted. They were not openly cruel, but they changed the room. Daniel's shoulders pulled inward, almost imperceptibly. Marcus looked down at the packet. Sophia's expression cooled. I felt it in my body before I named it. There it is. Not the teenage cruelty from the hallway, not the public mockery, something more adult, more polished. The ability to make people smaller while sounding reasonable. Maya whispered, he just shut Daniel down. Rachel nodded, and reframed empathy as weakness. I said nothing. In the conference room, Sophia remained composed. Feelings affect performance, she said. If a team is afraid, information flow gets worse. Ethan turned toward her. I'm not against empathy, I just don't think it should replace accountability. That's not what I said. I'm clarifying the risk. No, Sophia said. You're changing the point. A faint tension entered Ethan's smile. For the first time, someone had named what he was doing while he was doing it. Marcus cleared his throat. Maybe we can combine both. We tell the client we're conducting a fast internal review focused on causes, not blame, while also assigning clear ownership for next steps. Daniel nodded. That could work. Sophia wrote it down. Ethan leaned forward. Exactly. We position it as a rapid accountability review. That's stronger. Sophia looked at him. That's basically what Marcus just said. Ethan did not miss a beat. I'm sharpening it. In the observation room, Maya let out a quiet breath. Rachel wrote quickly. I watched Sophia's face. She did not look angry. She looked familiar, like someone deciding whether correcting him was worth the energy. I had seen that expression in mirrors. The exercise continued. For the next 40 minutes, Ethan dominated the discussion without ever openly taking control. He did it through timing, through tone, through small corrections, through repeating other people's ideas in slightly stronger language, and then acting as if he had improved them into existence. When Daniel suggested starting the client call with an apology, Ethan said, we don't want to sound guilty. When Marcus suggested acknowledging the client's frustration, Ethan said, yes, we validate, but we don't grovel. When Sophia suggested presenting revised creative options, Ethan said, that's what I was getting at earlier. He was not incompetent. That made it harder. His instincts around clients were strong. He understood pressure. He knew how to manage perception. Some of his ideas were genuinely useful, but every useful idea came wrapped in something sharp. By the final 30 minutes, the group had divided without meaning to. Sophia and Marcus were building the strategy. Daniel was quietly taking notes. Ethan was positioning himself to present. We should decide who speaks, Ethan said. I can open and handle the client-facing section. Sophia looked up. Why you? He smiled. I've done this kind of thing a lot. So have I. Sure, Ethan said quickly. But my background is high-stakes retention. Sophia's eyes narrowed slightly. My background is crisis communication. Marcus raised both hands slightly. Maybe we split sections based on strength. Sophia opens with the framing. Ethan handles retention. Daniel covers internal process, and I handle timeline. Daniel looked startled. I can do that. Ethan glanced at Daniel's notes. Internal process is pretty light. Maybe I should cover that too, and Daniel can help with Q&A. Daniel's face reddened. I have notes. I'm sure you do, Ethan said. I just think we need the strongest delivery. The room went quiet. Daniel looked down at his papers. I felt my pulse in my throat. 17 years disappeared. I was not in an observation room anymore. I was standing at my locker hearing Ethan say, careful everyone. Discount girl has premium thoughts. Same rhythm, same message. You are not enough. Sophia set her pen down. Daniel should present his section. Ethan looked annoyed now. I'm trying to make sure we win the exercise. This isn't about winning, Sophia said. Ethan laughed once. It's an interview. Of course it's about winning. Sophia held his gaze. Maybe that's the problem. In the observation room, Rachel murmured, good for her. Maya looked at me. Natalie, I'm watching. But inside I was not calm. I wanted to walk into the room. I wanted to stop it. I wanted to tell Daniel that he did not have to shrink just because Ethan needed to feel taller. But I stayed seated. Because this was the test. And because sometimes people revealed the truth only when no one rescued the room too quickly. The 90 minutes ended. Rachel entered the conference room and invited the candidates to begin their presentation. We sat across from them at the long table. Sophia opened. She was clear, confident, and structured. The problem is not only that the campaign underperformed, she said. The larger risk is erosion of trust, so our recovery plan addresses 3 levels: client confidence, internal clarity, and measurable campaign correction. It was strong. Ethan watched her with a tight smile. Marcus took the next section, laying out a realistic 48-hour timeline. Then Daniel stood. He held his notes with both hands. His voice shook slightly at first. For the internal review, we recommend a structured debrief with the creative, analytics, and account teams. The goal is to identify missed assumptions without creating a fear-based environment. He glanced down, then continued. If employees believe the review is only about punishment, they may protect themselves instead of the truth, so the manager should set the tone early by saying, we are here to fix the system and clarify responsibility, not humiliate people. The sentence hit me harder than I expected. Not humiliate people. I looked at Ethan. His eyes were on Daniel, but his expression was unreadable. Daniel finished. It was not perfect, but it was thoughtful, and it mattered. Then Ethan stood. His delivery was excellent, too excellent. He spoke smoothly about client retention, confidence recovery, performance dashboards, and expectation resets. He used polished language and strong pacing. He made eye contact. He sounded like a man who had saved difficult accounts before. But halfway through he said, as I mentioned earlier in the discussion, the key is a rapid accountability review. Sophia's pen stopped moving. Marcus looked down. Daniel's mouth tightened. Rachel noticed. So did I. That had not been his original idea. It had come from Marcus, refined by the group. Ethan had simply claimed it in the final performance. At the end, he smiled. We believe this approach gives the client confidence while keeping the team focused on measurable outcomes. We. The word sounded generous. It was not. After the presentation, Rachel thanked the candidates and asked them to wait in separate rooms for brief individual follow-ups. When they left, Maya closed the door behind them. Rachel looked at her notes. Well, she said. Maya did not bother softening her voice. He's good with clients and terrible with people. Rachel nodded. He controls the room by making others defend their right to speak. I looked at the empty chair where Ethan had been sitting. He's learned polish, I said. Maya glanced at me. But not kindness. Not kindness. The words settled heavily. Rachel asked, how do you want to proceed? I looked at the feedback sheets. Individually, I said, I want to hear how each of them experienced the group. We started with Marcus. He was diplomatic but honest. Ethan has strong instincts, he said, but I felt like he was more focused on appearing in charge than actually collaborating. Sophia was clearer. He took up too much space, she said, and when challenged, he reframed disagreement as inefficiency. That's dangerous in leadership. Then Daniel came in. He sat down carefully, as if unsure whether he was in trouble. Rachel smiled kindly. Daniel, this is not a disciplinary conversation. We just want your honest thoughts. He nodded. I asked, how did the group exercise feel to you? Daniel looked at his hands. At first, okay. And then? He swallowed. I don't know. Ethan is clearly experienced. I didn't want to slow the group down. Did he make you feel like you were slowing the group down? Daniel hesitated. The hesitation was answer enough. Finally, he said, a little. Maya's face tightened. Daniel continued. I know I'm not the loudest person in a room. I've had to work on that. My last few years have been complicated. My dad was sick, and I took time off to help him, so sometimes I already feel behind. I guess when someone talks like they're sure you don't belong at the table, part of you starts believing them. The room went quiet. I felt something inside me ache. Not loudly, deeply, because I knew exactly what that felt like. Daniel, I said softly, you belonged at the table. He looked up. For a second, his expression shifted like he had not expected anyone to say it so directly. Thank you, he said. When Daniel left, I sat very still. Maya said nothing. Rachel waited. I looked at Ethan's feedback sheet. There was only one question written across the top. I picked up my pen and wrote, Then we called Ethan in. He entered with controlled confidence, but I could see tension in his jaw. He knew the exercise had not gone perfectly. He also believed he could explain why. People like Ethan almost always believed explanation could outrun impact. Please sit, I said. He sat across from me. Rachel began. How do you feel the group exercise went? Ethan smiled. Overall, strong. We had good ideas, and I think the final presentation came together well. What What would you have done differently? He paused. I might have pushed for clearer roles earlier. Maya asked. Do you think everyone had equal space to contribute? Another pause. I think everyone contributed in their own way. That's not what I asked, Maya said. Ethan looked at her, surprised. She held his gaze calmly. Do you think everyone had equal space? His smile thinned. Probably not equal, no, but in a time-limited situation, someone has to move things forward. I leaned back slightly. And that someone was you? I have experience. So did Sophia. Yes, and she did well. You took one of Marcus's ideas and presented it as yours. Ethan's eyes sharpened. I don't agree with that. You said, as I mentioned earlier, but the rapid accountability review came from Marcus's framing. I refined the language. You claimed ownership. His jaw tightened. I think that's a harsh interpretation. I opened the folder in front of me. Here is some anonymous feedback from the group. I slid one page across the table. He looked down. His eyes moved across the comments. That last one did something to him. I saw it. A flicker of recognition. Or maybe just fear. He placed the paper down. People are sensitive in interviews, he said. The words entered the room like cold air. Maya's expression hardened. Rachel stopped writing. I felt my pulse slow. Not speed up. Slow. Because sometimes the answer you fear is also the answer that frees you from uncertainty. I looked at Ethan. Were people sensitive in high school too? His face changed. For a moment he looked almost young, then defensive. Natalie. No, I said. Answer the question. He looked at Rachel and Maya, then back at me. I don't think this is appropriate. Neither was what you did to me. Silence. There it was. No more polished language, no more leadership theory, no more pretending this was only about a resume. Ethan's face flushed. If this is about old jokes? My voice stayed quiet. That made it worse. You called me discount girl for 2 years. He looked away. You mocked my clothes, my lunch, my mother's income, my voice. You filled my locker with discount flyers. You made sure I learned that every room could become dangerous if you were in it. His mouth opened, then closed. Rachel looked stunned, though she already knew part of it. Maya looked like she wanted to throw him out herself. I continued. And then you changed my presentation file before the scholarship assembly. Ethan's eyes snapped back to mine. I didn't. Don't. One word. He stopped. I reached into the folder and pulled out a small plastic bag. Inside it was an old flash drive. Blue. Scratched. Useless now, probably. But I had kept it. Not because I wanted evidence, because pain sometimes attaches itself to objects when no one believes your words. I set it on the table. I kept this for 17 years, I said. Not because I wanted revenge, because when everyone told me there was no proof, I needed to remember that I had not imagined it. Ethan stared at the flash drive. His face had gone pale. Maya looked at the object, then at me. Rachel's voice was gentle. Natalie? I did not look away from Ethan. You cost me a scholarship interview. You made me afraid to speak in public for 3 years. You turned my work into a joke and then walked away laughing. Ethan swallowed. For once he had no immediate answer. Then, quietly, he said, I was a stupid kid. I almost believed he was about to say something human. Then he added, we all did stupid things. The small hope disappeared. No, I said, we all made mistakes. We did not all humiliate people for sport. His face hardened again. What do you want from me? You want me to say I was a monster? Fine. I was a jerk in high school. I'm sorry. Maya said, that didn't sound like an apology. Ethan turned toward her. With respect, you weren't there. No, Maya said, but I'm here now. The room went still. Rachel intervened carefully. Ethan, this conversation is relevant because today's exercise showed similar patterns. Dismissiveness, taking credit, framing others as weak when they ask for basic respect. Ethan rubbed a hand over his face. I need this job, he said. The sentence came out rawer than anything else he had said. For the first time, he sounded less like a candidate and more like a man running out of doors. My life isn't exactly going great, he continued. I'm behind on bills. I'm trying to stay close to my daughter. I'm trying to fix things. And now I'm sitting here getting judged for stuff that happened almost 20 years ago. I felt the impact of that. I did. Because desperation was real. Debt was real. A child depending on him was real. But so was Daniel looking down at his notes because Ethan had made him feel small. So was Sophia watching her idea get taken. So was 17-year-old me crying into my sleeve in a bathroom stall while adults decided my pain was too inconvenient to investigate. I am not judging you for being 17, I said. I am judging whether the man in front of me has learned anything since then. He looked at me. His eyes were tired now and angry and afraid. I have changed, he said. Then why is it still so hard for you to say exactly what you did? He had no answer. That was the truth. Not the resume, not the interview, not the client simulation. That silence. I stood. This interview is not finished. Ethan looked confused. Rachel did too. I said, we'll contact you with next steps. He stared at me. That's it? For today, yes. He pushed back his chair slowly. You know, I thought you'd be different. The words hit me strangely. Different how? He looked at the office around him, the glass walls, the awards, the motto outside the room. I don't know, he said. Bigger than this. Maya's eyes flashed. But I raised one hand slightly, stopping her. I walked around the table and stood near the door. "Ethan," I said, "being bigger does not mean pretending harm did not happen." His expression shifted. I opened the door. "It means deciding what to do with the truth once it is finally in the room." He left without answering. After the elevator doors closed behind him, the office felt too quiet. Rachel exhaled. Maya turned to me immediately. "You are not hiring him." I looked down the hallway. "I haven't decided." Maya looked stunned. "Natalie?" "I know. No, I don't think you do. He showed you who he is." Maybe. I turned back toward the conference room. "Or maybe he showed me who he becomes when he feels cornered." Maya crossed her arms. "That distinction is not as comforting as you think." She was right, but I could not shake the look on Ethan's face when he stared at the flash drive. Not guilt exactly, not full remorse, but recognition. A crack, small, dangerous, possibly meaningless, still there. Rachel asked, "What are you thinking?" I looked at Daniel's feedback sheet again, then I looked toward the wall outside the conference room. For years, those words had been my shield against people like Ethan. Now they were asking something harder from me. Not softness, not forgiveness, discernment. Could someone be held accountable without being destroyed? Could someone who had once abused power be taught what power was actually for? And could I do that without betraying the girl I used to be? "I'm thinking," I said slowly, "that Ethan Miller has never had to sit inside the discomfort he created for other people." Maya watched me carefully. "And you want to make him sit in it?" "Yes." "For revenge?" I looked at her. That question mattered, more than she knew. I thought of the auditorium, the laughter, the scholarship, the years of silence. Then I thought of Daniel, Sophia, the young employees at my company who trusted me to protect the culture I had promised them. "No," I said, and I meant it. Mostly. I want to know if he can learn from it. That evening, I stayed late again. The office emptied. Snow began falling outside the windows, soft and steady. The city lights blurred behind the glass. I sat alone at my desk with 3 papers in front of me. Ethan's resume, the group feedback, and the old flash drive. For 17 years, I had imagined that confronting him would make me feel powerful. It did not. It made me feel responsible. That was the part nobody told you about power. When you finally had it, it did not erase the past. It forced you to decide whether your pain would become a weapon, a wall, or a lesson. I picked up my phone and called Rachel. She answered on the second ring. "Everything okay? I want to bring Ethan back." Silence. Then Rachel said, "For another interview?" "No," I said, "for an accountability exercise." Rachel was quiet for a moment. "That is unusual." "I know. It may be emotionally complicated. I know that too. And if he refuses, then we have our answer." After I hung up, I sat in the darkening office and looked at the motto on the wall across the hall. Kindness matters more. Kindness, I realized, was not always gentle. Sometimes kindness looked like a door. Sometimes it looked like a mirror. And sometimes, if someone had spent years making other people feel small, kindness meant refusing to let him hide from the size of what he had done. I placed the flash drive back in the folder. Tomorrow, Ethan Miller would receive one final invitation. Not to prove that he was talented. He had already done that. Not to prove that he needed help. That was clear too. He would be invited to prove something far more difficult, that he could tell the truth without dressing it up, that he could hear the pain he caused without making himself the victim, that he could understand kindness not as weakness, not as decoration, not as some slogan on a wall, but as the one thing power was supposed to protect. I turned off the office light and whispered into the dark, "Now we find out if you can actually change." Ethan Miller came back on Monday morning. This time he arrived 10 minutes early. I saw him from my office window as he stepped out of the elevator, holding a leather folder in one hand. His suit was different, charcoal gray instead of navy, and his tie was dark red. He looked more polished than before, but not more comfortable. There was a stiffness in his shoulders now, the kind people carry when they know they are not walking into a room they control. Maya met him at reception. I watched them exchange a few words. Ethan nodded. Maya did not smile. She was professional, but there was no warmth in her face. I could not blame her. Over the weekend, Maya had sent me one text. I had stared at that message for a long time, because she was right. There was danger in this. Not physical danger, something more complicated. The danger of giving too much grace to someone simply because I wanted my own pain to become meaningful. The danger of turning his growth into my responsibility. The danger of believing that if Ethan changed, then somehow what happened to me would hurt less. I knew better. His change would not give me back the scholarship. It would not erase the laughter. It would not unwrite the years I spent measuring my worth by how invisible I could become. But I also knew this. If I rejected him now, I would be within my rights. And if I destroyed him, some people might even say I was justified. But justified and healed were not the same thing. That was the lesson I was still learning. Rachel entered my office a few minutes later with a slim folder against her chest. "Everything is prepared," she said. "Thank you." She sat across from me. "Natalie, before we begin, I need to ask one more time. Are you emotionally prepared for this meeting?" I looked through the glass wall toward the hallway. Ethan stood outside conference room C, looking at the photographs on the wall. One photo showed our team volunteering at a youth mentorship event. Another showed Maya laughing with 2 interns during a company picnic. Another showed me on stage at a business conference, holding a microphone, speaking to a room full of people. He stopped at that one. I wondered if he remembered the girl who could not speak at all. No, I said honestly. But I'm clear. Rachel nodded slowly. Clear is enough. Conference room C was smaller than the room we had used before. I had chosen it deliberately. No long table, no one-way glass, no audience, just a round table, 4 chairs, a screen, and a window looking out over the city. There would be no performance today, no place to hide behind presentation skills. When Ethan entered, he noticed the setup immediately. Maya sat on one side of the table. Rachel sat beside her. Daniel Price and Sophia Reed were already there too. Ethan stopped in the doorway. His eyes moved from Daniel to Sophia, then to me. "What is this?" he asked. I gestured to the empty chair. "Please sit down." He did not move. "I thought this was a final interview." "It is. This doesn't look like an interview." "No," I said. "It looks like accountability." His expression tightened. "I'm sorry?" "Sit down, Ethan." For a moment I thought he might leave. Part of me almost wanted him to. It would make everything simpler. He could reject the lesson, and I could reject the candidate. The story would end cleanly. But Ethan sat down. He placed his folder on the table with careful control. "What exactly are we doing here?" Rachel answered, her voice calm and professional. "Today's discussion is about leadership impact. Yesterday's group exercise raised concerns about collaboration, respect, and accountability. Since this role involves managing people, we need to evaluate whether you can recognize your own behavior and repair harm when necessary." Ethan looked at Daniel and Sophia again. "So they're here to criticize me?" Sophia spoke before I could. "No, we're here because what happened involved us." Ethan's jaw shifted. Daniel sat quietly, hands folded in front of him. Maya watched Ethan with a stillness I had come to recognize. She was not angry in the dramatic sense. She was alert, protective. I opened the folder in front of me. "You were invited back because your technical skills are strong," I said. "But technical skill is not enough here. Before I make a decision, I want to see whether you can do something much harder than impress a client." Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. "What?" "Tell the truth without making excuses." Silence settled over the room. Outside the window, Chicago moved on as if nothing important was happening. Cars passed, steam rose from vents. People hurried through the cold with no idea that inside this room, a man was about to meet a version of himself he had avoided for years. I slid a printed sheet across the table. It was not a performance review. It was a timeline, not of his career, of the group exercise. 9:58, Daniel suggests diagnosing the problem before proposing solutions. Ethan interrupts. 10:11, Sophia proposes a no-blame audit. Ethan calls it soft. 10:24, Marcus suggests combining accountability with internal trust. Ethan later presents this idea as his own. 10, Ethan suggests Daniel should not present his section. Final presentation includes language from Marcus and Sophia without clear attribution. Ethan read the sheet. His face remained controlled, but color rose slowly along his neck. "This is a very negative interpretation," he said. "It is a documented sequence," Rachel replied. He looked at her. "With respect, people interrupt in meetings. Ideas overlap. That's normal." Sophia leaned forward slightly. "Ethan, you didn't just interrupt. You redirected the room so people had to fight their way back into the conversation." He turned toward her. "I was trying to keep us focused." "You were trying to keep yourself central." His eyes flashed. "That's your opinion." "Yes," Sophia said. "It is, and it's also my experience of working with you." Daniel glanced at her, then looked down again. I turned to him. "Daniel, would you like to speak?" He hesitated. Ethan saw the hesitation and looked away as if Daniel's discomfort annoyed him. That small movement nearly ended the meeting for me, but Daniel inhaled and spoke. "At one point I wanted to stop contributing," he said quietly. Ethan looked back at him. Daniel continued. "Not because I didn't have ideas. Because every time I said something, it felt like it either got dismissed or rephrased by someone else in a way that made me look less capable." Ethan's mouth tightened. "I never said you were incapable." "No," Daniel said. "You just made the room feel that way." The sentence hung there. Simple. Devastating. Ethan looked down at the timeline again. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then he said, "I'm sorry if you felt that way." Maya closed her eyes briefly. Sophia exhaled through her nose. Daniel said nothing. I folded my hands on the table. "Ethan," I said, "that phrase is not an apology." His face hardened. "I'm acknowledging his feelings." "No, you are placing the problem inside his reaction instead of your behavior." He looked at me. The old defensiveness was rising again. I could see it like a storm behind his eyes. "What do you want me to say?" "The truth." "You keep saying that like there's some magic sentence you're waiting for." "There isn't." "Then what?" I leaned forward. "I want you to stop performing remorse and start identifying harm." His expression changed. For the first time, the words seemed to reach somewhere beneath his pride. I continued. You don't have to agree with every criticism. You don't have to collapse. You don't have to call yourself worthless. Accountability is not self-destruction, but you do have to say what you did without hiding behind intention. The room was painfully quiet. Ethan looked at Daniel, then at Sophia, then at the window. His fingers pressed into the edge of the paper. I interrupted Daniel, he said finally. Daniel looked up. Ethan swallowed. I interrupted you because I thought my experience mattered more than your thought process. No one moved. It was not enough, but it was a start. He looked at Sophia. I called your idea soft because I didn't like that it made my approach sound harsh. Sophia's expression remained guarded. And I used Marcus's phrasing because it sounded good, Ethan continued. I told myself I was refining it, but I didn't give credit. Rachel wrote something down. Maya's face did not soften yet, but her posture shifted slightly. Ethan leaned back and rubbed both hands over his face. This is humiliating, he muttered. I felt the word strike the room. Humiliating. There it was, the word that had defined so much of my past. I looked at him carefully. No, I said. He dropped his hands. No. Humiliation is when people laugh while your dignity is being taken from you. His eyes locked onto mine. This is discomfort, I said, and discomfort is what happens when the truth finally has nowhere else to go. For a moment, he looked as if he hated me. Maybe he did. Maybe part of him needed to. I could live with that. Then he looked down. His voice came lower. I didn't come here to hurt anyone. I believe that, I said. His eyes flicked up, surprised. But impact matters more than intention. He looked at Daniel again. I'm sorry, he said. Daniel did not immediately respond. Ethan continued, and this time the words came slower, less polished. I'm sorry I made you feel like you didn't belong in the conversation. You did. Your point about fear-based reviews was good. Better than what I said, honestly. Daniel blinked, as if he had not expected that. Ethan turned to Sophia. And I'm sorry I took up space you earned. You were right about crisis communication. I didn't want to admit that because I wanted to look like the strongest candidate. Sophia studied him. Thank you for saying that. She did not forgive him. She did not have to. That was another thing people misunderstood about apology. An apology did not purchase forgiveness. It returned ownership. For the first time that morning, Ethan seemed smaller. Not crushed, just closer to human. Then his gaze shifted to me, and the room changed again, because we both knew the smaller apologies had only brought us to the larger one. He looked at the folder near my hand. The old blue flash drive was inside. I had not planned to take it out unless I needed to. I still did not know if I needed to. Ethan looked away first. Natalie, he said. My name sounded different in his mouth now. Not casual, not strategic, careful. I waited. He pressed his palms flat against the table. I don't know how to talk about high school without sounding like I'm making excuses. Then don't start with explanations. He nodded once, almost to himself. Daniel and Sophia sat silently. Maya looked at me, asking without words if I wanted them to leave. I shook my head slightly. No, this was not a private wound anymore. Not because I wanted spectators. Because Ethan had used audiences as weapons. Now he needed witnesses for truth. He inhaled. I was cruel to you. The sentence was plain, no decoration. My body reacted before my mind did. My chest tightened. My hands went cold. For 17 years, I had waited for someone to say it that simply. Not boys being boys. Not kids are mean. Not you were sensitive. Not it was a joke. I was cruel to you. Ethan kept his eyes on the table. I called you names because people laughed when I did it. And I liked that. I liked being the person everyone watched. I liked that I could say something and change the way people looked at you. My throat tightened. The room blurred slightly, but I did not cry. Not yet, he continued. I made fun of your clothes and your lunch because I knew those things hurt. I knew you didn't have what other kids had, and instead of leaving you alone, I used it. His voice cracked faintly, and he seemed ashamed of that too. Then he looked at me, and the presentation, the air in my lungs stopped. Maya shifted beside me. Rachel lowered her pen. Ethan's face had gone pale. I changed the file. Nobody spoke. Outside, a siren wailed somewhere far below, then faded into traffic. Ethan looked down again. I found your flash drive in the computer lab the day before. You had left it plugged in. I was there with 2 guys from the team. One of them joked that we should mess with it. He swallowed hard. I did it. The room felt too small, not because I was surprised. I had always known, but knowing and hearing were different things. Hearing made it real in a way that cut through time. I saw the auditorium again, the screen, the laughter, my own hands shaking over a keyboard that would not save me. Ethan's voice continued, quieter now. I edited the slides. I thought it would be funny. I thought everyone would laugh, and then Monday it would be old news. He shook his head. That's what I told myself, that it was just one moment, but I remember your face on that stage. I looked at him. His eyes were wet now, though he did not let the tears fall. I remember it, he said, and I still laughed. My mouth felt dry. For a long moment I could not speak. Part of me wanted to stand up and leave. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to ask him why again and again, as if any answer could ever be large enough to fill the space his cruelty had carved out of me. But there was no answer big enough. There never had been. Finally, I said, "You cost me that scholarship." He nodded. "I know." "No," I said, "you don't." He flinched. "You cost me more than a summer program. You cost me the belief that work would protect me. I thought if I prepared enough, if I was good enough, if I earned my place, then people would have to respect me." My voice shook, but I kept going. After that day, I stopped believing effort was safe. I stopped speaking unless I had rehearsed every word. I became terrified of rooms full of people. And while you moved on, I spent years trying to rebuild something you broke because you wanted a laugh. Ethan's face crumpled slightly. He whispered, "I'm sorry." This time, he did not add if. He did not add but. He did not add we were kids. He just sat inside the sentence. I wanted that to make me feel better. It did not. Not immediately. Maybe not in the way stories promised. There was no sudden lightness, no music swelling, no clean emotional release. There was only an old wound finally named in front of the person who made it. And strangely, that was enough for the moment. I looked at him. "Why now?" He frowned slightly. "What do you mean? Why admit it now? Because you want the job?" He closed his eyes. When he opened them, he looked exhausted. "At first, yes." The honesty surprised me. He continued, "When I saw you in the interview room, all I could think was that my past was about to ruin another part of my life. I was angry. I thought it was unfair." Maya's expression sharpened. Ethan saw it and nodded grimly. "I know how that sounds." "It sounds honest," I said. He looked back at me. "Then yesterday after I left, I picked up my daughter from her mother's apartment. She's 11. Her name is Lily." His voice changed when he said the name. Softer, less guarded. "She was quiet in the car. I asked what was wrong. She told me some girls at school had been making fun of her because she wears the same sneakers almost every day." The room went still. Ethan's throat moved. She tried to laugh it off, said it wasn't a big deal, but I could see she'd been crying. He looked at me then, and something in his face had finally broken open, and all I could hear was myself. For the first time I saw it. Not full transformation, not redemption, but understanding landing where pride had been standing. Ethan looked down at his hands. "I sat in the parking lot after I dropped her off, and I thought about you. Not the version of you sitting here with a company and glass walls and people who respect you. I thought about you at 17. His voice lowered. "And I hated that I was someone else's version of the girls hurting my daughter." Daniel looked away, blinking. Sophia's expression softened, just slightly. I felt something inside me shift, but I did not name it yet. Ethan said, "I don't know how to fix what I did." "You can't," I said. He nodded. "I know. You can only decide what kind of person you become after admitting it." He looked at me. For once, he did not argue. Rachel closed her folder gently. "I think we should take a short break," she said. No one objected. Daniel and Sophia stepped out first. Maya followed them after giving me a look that said she would be right outside. Rachel paused near the door. "Natalie? I'm okay." She did not look convinced, but she nodded and left. Then it was just Ethan and me. The room felt different without the others. Quieter. More dangerous in a way. Not because he could hurt me now. Because I could hurt him. I had the power. I could reject him. I could call every company in his network if I wanted to destroy him, though I never would. I could tell him he was exactly what he had always been and watch his face fall. I could take the 17-year-old girl inside me and hand her the revenge she had once dreamed about. Ethan seemed to know it. He sat still, waiting. I opened the folder and took out the old flash drive. I placed it on the table between us. His eyes moved to it immediately. "I kept this," I said, "because for years it felt like the only witness I had." He looked pained. "I'm sorry." "I believe you." He looked up quickly. The words surprised me too, but they were true. I believed his apology. That did not mean I trusted him. That did not mean I forgave him. It only meant I recognized the difference between a performance and a crack in the armor. He whispered, "Does that change anything?" "Yes," I said. Hope flickered in his face. Then I added, "But not the way you think." The hope dimmed. "You are not getting the senior account manager position." He closed his eyes for a second. When he opened them, he nodded. "I understand. You are not ready to manage people." "I know." That answer mattered. He did not argue. He did not defend. He did not remind me of his experience or his daughter or his bills. He simply said, "I know." I leaned back. "But I'm considering something else." His brow furrowed. "What?" "A lower-level role, client support associate, 3-month probation, no management authority, lower salary, direct supervision under Maya." He stared at me. "You're serious?" "I have not decided yet." His mouth opened, then closed. I continued, "If I offer it, it will not be charity, and it will not be forgiveness. It will be a test, a real one. Not in this room, not with prepared answers, in daily behavior." He nodded slowly, still processing. "There would be conditions," I said. "Okay. First, you attend our internal communication and leadership training from the beginning with junior staff. You do not act above it." "Okay." "Second, you write formal apologies to Daniel and Sophia. Not dramatic, not emotional manipulation. Specific, behavior, impact, accountability." He swallowed. "Okay." "Third, you write a personal reflection about power, school, workplace, leadership. I want to know whether you understand how easily power becomes cruelty when no one challenges it." He looked down. That sounds fair. Fourth, I said, if Maya tells me you have dismissed, mocked, taken credit from, or intimidated anyone, you are gone. He looked up. Maya already hates me. I almost smiled. No, Maya does not hate you. Maya believes people should be protected from you until you prove they don't need to be. He absorbed that. Then he gave a small, sad laugh. That might be worse. It should be. For the first time, his laugh did not feel like a weapon. It felt like recognition. He looked at the flash drive again. Why would you do this? The question was quiet, genuine. I looked at him for a long moment, because I asked myself the same thing all weekend. Because some part of me wanted to prove I was better than you. Because some part of me wanted to make my pain useful. Because I know what it feels like when nobody gives you a path forward. Because if I only use power to punish, then I have learned nothing from what power did to me. But I did not say all of that. I said, because kindness is not letting people escape consequences. He listened. It is giving consequences a purpose. His eyes lowered. Neither of us spoke for a while. Then he said, I don't deserve this. No, I said, you don't. He flinched, but he accepted it. I continued, that's why if I offer it, you don't treat it like something you earned. You treat it like something you are responsible for. He nodded. I can do that. I hope so. There was another knock at the door. Rachel stepped in. Ready? I looked at Ethan. Yes. The others returned. Daniel and Sophia sat down again, though the atmosphere had shifted. They did not know what had been said in the break, but they could feel that something had changed. Ethan turned to them before anyone else spoke. I want to say something, he said. Rachel glanced at me. I nodded. Ethan faced Daniel first. I'm sorry for how I treated you in the exercise. I interrupted you. I dismissed your ideas, and I tried to make myself look stronger by making you look uncertain. That was wrong. Daniel looked at him carefully. Thank you. Ethan turned to Sophia. I'm sorry for taking credit for language and ideas that came from you and Marcus. I didn't want to acknowledge that someone else had a stronger point. That was ego. Sophia said, I appreciate the specificity. Then Ethan looked at me. He did not apologize again. Not in front of everyone. He had already done that. Instead, he said something that landed even heavier. I used to think being powerful meant no one could embarrass you. I think maybe I got that backward. I looked at him. He continued. Maybe power is when you can embarrass someone and choose not to. The room became quiet. For the first time since Ethan Miller walked through my company's doors, I saw not the boy from the cafeteria, not the man from the first interview, but someone standing at the edge of a choice. Not redeemed, not fixed, not forgiven, just aware. And awareness was the first honest ground he had stood on. After the meeting ended, Ethan left without asking about the job. That mattered too. He simply thanked Rachel, nodded to Maya, looked once at Daniel and Sophia, then walked toward the elevator. I watched him stop beneath the motto again. This time, he did not smirk. He did not look away. He stood there for several seconds, reading the words like he had misunderstood them the first 2 times. Then the elevator opened. He stepped inside and the doors closed. Maya came to stand beside me. You're thinking about giving him the probation role, she said. Yes, she sighed. I still don't like him. You don't have to. I don't trust him. Neither do I. That made her look at me. I continued, trust is not where this starts. Accountability is. Maya looked toward the elevator. And if he fails, then he leaves. And if he changes? I watched the closed elevator doors. That question was harder. If he changes, I said, then maybe one less person in the world makes someone else feel small. Maya was quiet for a long time. Then she said, that sounds like something 17-year-old Natalie deserved. The words hit me harder than I expected. For a second, I could not answer. I looked back toward conference room C. The old flash drive was still on the table. A small blue piece of plastic, a relic from the worst day of my teenage life. For years, I had thought it represented proof of what Ethan did, but now, looking at it in the quiet room, I realized it had also become proof of something else. That I had survived, that I had built a life large enough for the truth to finally enter. That the girl on that stage had not disappeared. She had become the woman who could sit across from the person who broke her voice and decide not to use her own voice as a weapon. Not because he deserved gentleness, but because she deserved peace. I picked up the flash drive and placed it back in the folder. Then I turned to Maya. Prepare the probation offer, I said. 3 months. Client support associate. Direct supervision under you. Maya raised one eyebrow. Under me? Yes. A slow, dangerous smile appeared on her face. Well, she said, then he really is going to learn accountability. For the first time all week, I laughed. Not much, just enough to feel like air returning to a room that had been closed for too long. Outside, the snow had stopped. The city was still cold, still gray, still full of people carrying invisible histories through glass buildings and crowded streets. But the sky had begun to clear. And as sunlight touched the office wall, the company motto brightened again. This time, I believed it in a new way. Kindness was not weakness. Kindness was not pretending harm never happened. Kindness was not giving people power they had not earned. Kindness was the courage to hold someone accountable without becoming cruel yourself. And tomorrow, Ethan Miller would learn that a second chance was not a reward. It was a responsibility, a heavy one he would either carry with humility or drop. Either way, I would be watching. Ethan Miller signed the probation offer on a Tuesday morning. He did not smile when he did it. That was the first thing I noticed. The old Ethan would have smiled. Maybe not because he was happy, but because smiling had once been one of his weapons. A smile could make cruelty look casual. A smile could make disrespect look like confidence. A smile could make other people question whether they had been hurt at all. But that morning, he simply read every page of the offer, held the pen for a moment, and signed his name at the bottom. Client Support Associate. 3-month probation. Direct supervision under Maya Thompson. No management authority. Mandatory internal communication training. Weekly check-ins with HR. 0 tolerance for intimidation, credit theft, retaliation, or disrespectful conduct. It was not the job he had applied for. Not even close. The salary was lower. The title was lower. The authority was non-existent. In any other company, a man with Ethan's resume might have considered it an insult. But Ethan looked at the signed paper, then pushed it gently back across the table. "Thank you," he said. Maya sat beside me, her tablet open, expression unreadable. Rachel collected the document. "Your start date is next Monday," she said. "You'll report to Maya at 8:30 a.m. sharp." Ethan nodded. "I'll be here." Maya looked at him. "Sharp means 8:30. Not walking through reception at 8:30. At your desk, ready to begin." A faint trace of the old irritation crossed his face. It was small, but I saw it. So did Maya. Ethan inhaled once. Understood. That mattered. Not because obedience was transformation, but because a week earlier he would have hidden that irritation behind a joke or turned it back on her somehow. He would have made Maya seem unreasonable for expecting basic professionalism. This time, he swallowed it. Maybe because he had no choice. Maybe because he was trying. At that stage, I did not know the difference, and I had learned not to reward intentions too early. After he left, Maya turned to me. "You know he's going to hate reporting to me." "I know, good." I almost laughed. Rachel did not. She looked down at the signed offer, then at me. "We need to be careful. His apology may have been real, but workplace behavior is what matters now." "I agree." Maya leaned back. "I'm not going to babysit him." "I'm not asking you to." "Yes, you are." Her honesty made me pause. She was right, in a way I was. I was asking Maya to manage a man she did not trust, a man whose behavior had already affected candidates in a single exercise. I was asking her to give time and energy to someone who had not earned her faith. That deserved acknowledgement. "You're right," I said. "This is extra labor, and I'm sorry for putting that on you." Maya's expression softened slightly, but only slightly. "I respect what you're trying to do. I do, but I need to know something." "What?" "If he crosses the line, are you going to see it clearly? Or are you going to see the lesson you want him to learn?" The question landed hard because it touched the fear I had not spoken aloud. That I might become invested in Ethan's redemption because it made my own suffering feel more useful. That I might confuse progress with healing. That I might give him more patience than I would give anyone else, because his change would prove something I desperately wanted to believe. I looked at Maya. "If he crosses the line, he's gone." She held my gaze. "Even if he cries?" "Yes." "Even if he mentions his daughter?" I swallowed. "Yes." "Even if he says you're taking away his last chance?" My chest tightened. "Yes." Maya nodded once. "Okay, then I'll supervise him." It was not enthusiasm, it was trust. And I knew better than to waste it. Ethan's first week began badly. Not disastrously, but badly enough to remind everyone that accountability did not magically become character just because someone signed a paper. On Monday morning, he arrived at 8:18 and sat at the desk assigned to him near the client support team. His desk was smaller than the private office he probably imagined himself having. No view, no leadership badge, no assistant, just a computer, a headset, a notepad, and a laminated onboarding checklist. Maya walked him through the basics. "Our support associates handle first-line client communications, call notes, issue routing, meeting summaries, and follow-up documentation," she said. Ethan nodded. "I've managed support teams before." Maya looked at him. "You haven't worked on this one." He paused. "Right," she continued. "You'll shadow Jenna this morning." Jenna Lee was 24, recently promoted from intern to junior support lead. She was bright, meticulous, and quiet in the way people sometimes mistook for weakness if they were not paying attention. Ethan looked at her, then back at Maya. "I'll be shadowing her?" "Yes." Jenna gave a polite smile. "Hi, Ethan. I'll walk you through the ticketing system." For a fraction of a second, Ethan's face did something ugly. Not openly, not enough that Jenna noticed. But I happened to be passing through the client floor with Rachel, and I saw it from across the room. The slight tightening around his eyes. The humiliation. A 35-year-old man who had once applied to lead a team was now being trained by a 24-year-old woman. His pride did not like it. But he stood. "Thanks, Jenna," he said. "I appreciate it." That was the second thing I noticed. He still felt the old impulses, but he did not always obey them. By Wednesday, however, the cracks began to show. A mid-level client from an outdoor apparel company called about delayed analytics reports. Jenna asked Ethan to listen in on the call and take notes. The client was frustrated but not unreasonable. We were told we'd have the report by Monday, the client said. It's Wednesday. I need to know whether this is going to be a pattern. Jenna kept her tone calm. I understand. I'm checking the status now, and I'll make sure you have a clear update by noon. Ethan muted his headset and whispered, Tell him the analytics team caused the delay. Jenna shook her head slightly while still listening to the client. Ethan whispered again, You need to control the narrative. Jenna typed a note to him on the shared screen. Ethan leaned back, visibly annoyed. After the call, Jenna turned to him. We don't throw other departments under the bus. I wasn't throwing anyone under the bus, Ethan said. I was being transparent. There's a difference between transparency and deflection. He gave a short laugh. Okay, I've handled accounts worth more than this entire client category. The words came out before he could stop them. Jenna went still. The client floor quieted just a little. Maya looked up from her desk. Ethan realized it immediately. His face changed. For 1 second, he looked ready to defend it. Then he closed his mouth. Maya stood. Conference room, she said. Ethan followed her without arguing. I heard about it 15 minutes later. Not from Maya. From Ethan. He knocked on my office door near lunchtime. I looked up from an investor update. Come in. He stepped inside but did not sit. I said something disrespectful to Jenna. I closed my laptop. What did you say? He repeated it exactly. No softening. No editing. No, it came out wrong. That was new. Why did you say it? I asked. He looked toward the floor. Because I felt embarrassed that she knew the process better than I did. And because I wanted to remind her I used to be important. The sentence was ugly, but honest. I watched him carefully. Did you apologize? Yes. Specifically? Yes. What did you say? I told her I disrespected her experience to protect my ego. I told her she was right about the client call, and I asked if she was still willing to walk me through the ticket escalation process. And what did she say? She said yes. He paused. Then she told me not to make her regret it. Despite myself, I almost smiled. That sounds like Jenna. Ethan nodded. I deserved it. You did. He accepted that too. A month earlier, accepting that kind of correction would have been unthinkable for him. Still, I did not praise him. Not yet. Some people expected applause for cleaning up messes they had created. I refused to teach him that accountability was heroic. It was basic. So I simply said, don't make her regret it. I won't. He turned to leave, then stopped. Natalie? Yes. Is it always going to feel like this? What? Catching myself too late. The question stayed in the air. There was no manipulation in it. Only exhaustion. I thought carefully before answering. For a while, yes. Then if you keep practicing, you catch yourself earlier. He nodded slowly. And after that? After that, you start becoming someone who doesn't need to be caught as often. He absorbed that like it was both punishment and hope. Okay, he said. Then he left. The first month was full of moments like that. Small failures, small repairs, progress that looked less like transformation and more like friction. Ethan interrupted people in meetings, then forced himself to stop and say, sorry. Finish your thought. He wrote client follow-up emails that sounded too defensive, then rewrote them after Maya marked them with blunt comments. He struggled when younger employees corrected him. He struggled more when they were right. He struggled most when nobody cared who he used to be. That, I realized, was the real punishment. Not the lower title. Not the lower salary. Not even reporting to Maya. The real punishment was irrelevance. Ethan had built much of his identity on being admired, feared, or at least noticed. At Brooks and Lane, he was simply new. He had to earn trust from people who did not care that he had once been a quarterback, once managed larger accounts, once walked through rooms like gravity favored him. Here, the intern with good notes had more authority over a process than he did. Here, Jenna could correct him. Here, Maya could tell him to redo a report without softening the sentence. Here, Daniel Price was offered the senior account manager position instead of him. That happened at the end of Ethan's second week. Daniel accepted. When the announcement went out, the office responded warmly. Daniel looked shocked by the applause, like praise still felt like something he had to borrow rather than own. I watched Ethan from across the room. His face went still when Daniel's name was announced. For one tense moment, I wondered if the old resentment would return. Maybe it did. I saw him look down. I saw his jaw tighten. Then he stood with everyone else and clapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, but he clapped. After the meeting, he walked over to Daniel. I watched from my office doorway, close enough to see, but not close enough to hear every word. Ethan said something. Daniel looked cautious. Ethan extended his hand. Daniel shook it. Later, Daniel told me what Ethan had said. Congratulations, you earned the room better than I did. It was not poetic, it was not grand, but it was specific. And specificity, I was learning, was where real change started. Still, not everyone trusted him. Some employees knew only that Ethan had been hired on probation after a strange final interview. Others sensed tension and filled in the blanks. Maya did not gossip and neither did Rachel, but offices had weather systems of their own. People felt pressure changes. Jenna remained polite but cautious. Sophia, who had not joined the company but stayed in touch with Rachel, sent a short email after receiving Ethan's written apology. Ethan forwarded the response to Rachel as part of his accountability file. No comment, just the email. Maya told me that mattered more than if he had written a long emotional paragraph about how much it moved him. He's learning not to center himself, she said. Slowly. Painfully, she corrected. Painfully, then. By the 6th week, Ethan had become competent at the support role. Not brilliant, competent. He knew the ticketing system, handled client complaints without defensiveness most of the time, and began asking more questions than he answered. That was one of the first real changes I noticed. The old Ethan gave declarations. The new Ethan, when he remembered to be new, asked, "What am I missing? Who has context on this? Did I cut you off? Can you say more about that?" Some people answered cautiously at first, then more honestly. Trust, if it came at all, came in inches. One Friday afternoon, we had a difficult client escalation with a nonprofit organization called Harbor House, which supported unhoused teenagers in the city. Their fundraising campaign had underperformed, and the executive director was upset. Not angry in an entitled way, afraid. "If this campaign fails," she said over Zoom, "we may have to cut weekend outreach hours." Ethan was assigned to take notes while Daniel led the call. I sat in because Harbor House was one of our pro bono clients, and I cared deeply about the work. The conversation grew tense when analytics showed that part of the problem came from unclear messaging approved by the client's own board. A month earlier, Ethan would have jumped on that. He would have used the board's mistake to protect our agency. Instead, he listened. Daniel said, "We all missed an opportunity to clarify the message earlier. That includes our team, so let's focus less on blame and more on what we can adjust quickly." The executive director's eyes filled with tired tears. "Thank you," she said. "I just need help." Ethan looked down at his notes. After the call, Daniel asked him, "Can you draft the follow-up?" Ethan nodded. The draft arrived 20 minutes later. It was short, clear, and surprisingly gentle. Daniel forwarded it to me with one line. I sat at my desk reading that email twice. Not because the wording was extraordinary, because it did not sound like the man who had once said, "Clients don't pay us to protect feelings." It sounded like someone learning that feelings were often where the stakes lived. The most important moment, however, did not happen in the office. It happened at Westfield Community Center. Every spring, Brooks and Lane sponsored a career mentorship day for local high school students. We brought in small groups to learn about marketing, communication, design, and public speaking. It was one of my favorite programs and one of the hardest for me emotionally, because every time I stood in front of nervous teenagers, I saw pieces of who I used to be. That year, Maya asked if Ethan should be excluded from the event. "He's on probation," she said. "We can keep him in the office." I thought about it. Then I said, "Let him come, but not as a speaker, as support." Maya frowned. "You're sure?" "No, but I want to see who he is around people with less power." The community center gym had been arranged with folding tables, poster boards, laptops, and a small stage. Students moved in clusters, some excited, some bored, some trying hard to look like they did not care. Ethan was assigned to help set up presentation materials and guide students to workshop tables. For the first hour, he did exactly that. Quietly. No grand gestures. No attempts to impress. Then, during the public speaking workshop, I noticed a boy sitting alone near the back. He was maybe 16. Thin, with dark curly hair and a green hoodie that was too large for him. His sneakers were worn almost flat at the soles. He held a note card in both hands and stared at it like it contained a threat. Across the room, 3 other boys glanced at him and whispered. One of them looked down at his shoes and laughed. The boy heard. Of course he heard. Teenagers always heard. His shoulders folded inward. I felt something cold pass through me. For a second, the community center disappeared. I was back in the cafeteria. Discount girl. Sad sandwich. Premium thoughts. Then Ethan moved. He had been standing near the side table with extra pens. He saw the boys laughing. He saw the boy in the green hoodie shrink into himself. I watched him carefully. This was not a staged exercise. No HR notes. No feedback sheet. No career consequences unless someone noticed. He could ignore it. Most people did. Instead, Ethan picked up a stack of blank note cards and walked to the back of the room. He did not confront the laughing boys first. That surprised me. The old Ethan would have used public shame because public shame was the language he knew best. This Ethan sat down in the empty chair beside the boy. I moved closer, pretending to check the workshop schedule. The boy looked startled. Ethan kept his voice low. "Hey, I'm Ethan. You working on your speech?" The boy shrugged. "Kind of. What's your name?" "Caleb." "Nice to meet you, Caleb." The boy nodded without looking up. Ethan glanced toward the note card. "What's your topic?" Caleb mumbled. "Why my neighborhood needs better after-school programs." "That's a strong topic." Caleb gave a humorless little laugh. "It's stupid." "No," Ethan said. "It's not." Caleb looked at him then. Ethan rested his elbows on his knees. "Who told you it was stupid?" Caleb's eyes flicked toward the 3 boys. Ethan followed his gaze. For one moment his face changed, not into anger, into recognition. He turned back to Caleb. "Listen to me," Ethan said. People with loud mouths are not automatically people with better futures. The boy was quiet. Ethan continued. When I was your age, I was the loud mouth. My breath caught. Caleb looked uncertain, like he did not know whether this was a confession or a warning. Ethan said, I thought making people laugh at someone else made me powerful. It didn't. It made me small. Took me a long time to understand that. The boy stared at him. The 3 boys across the room had stopped whispering now. Ethan did not look at them. He stayed focused on Caleb. If your speech matters to you, say it, even if your voice shakes. Especially if your voice shakes. Don't let people who haven't built anything make you embarrassed about caring. Caleb looked down at his note card again. My shoes are messed up, he whispered. Ethan was quiet for a second. Then he said, that has nothing to do with your voice. Something in my chest tightened so sharply I had to look away, because no one had said that to me. Not once. Not when I needed it most. The workshop instructor called for volunteers. Caleb did not stand immediately. His fingers trembled around the note card. Ethan said nothing more. He simply stayed beside him. Then Caleb stood. The room quieted. He walked to the front, not confidently, not smoothly, but he walked. When he began speaking, his voice shook. A few students shifted. One of the boys who had laughed started to whisper again. Ethan turned his head and looked at him. Just looked. No threat, no scene, no humiliation. The boy stopped. Caleb continued. By the end of his short speech, the room applauded. Not wildly, but enough. Caleb looked surprised by the sound. Ethan clapped too. This time there was nothing strategic in it. I stood near the side wall, unable to move. Maya came up beside me. Well, she said quietly. I did not answer. She glanced at my face. You okay? I nodded, though I was not sure that was true. Across the room, Caleb returned to his seat. Ethan handed him a fresh note card. Keep writing, he said. Caleb gave him the smallest smile. That moment stayed with me all afternoon. Not because it redeemed Ethan. One kind act did not erase years of cruelty, but because it proved something I had needed to know. When placed near someone vulnerable, Ethan had not chosen the old script. He had interrupted it. After the event, while the team packed up, I found Ethan folding tablecloths near the supply closet. He looked up when I approached. I saw what happened with Caleb, I said. He placed one folded cloth on the stack. I didn't do it for you to see. I know. He looked down. That made it worse, somehow. What did? Seeing him like that. He swallowed. I kept thinking about Lily. Then I thought about you. Then I thought about how many times I probably made someone feel exactly like that and never even noticed what happened afterward. I said nothing. He continued. I used to think the bad part was the joke, the nickname, the moment everyone laughed. He looked toward the gym where students were gathering their backpacks. But maybe the worst part is what happens later, when the room moves on and the person has to carry it alone. The words hit me with such force that for a moment I could not speak, because that was exactly it. The room moves on, the person carries it alone. Ethan looked at me, and this time there was no request in his eyes. No hope for praise, no silent demand that his insight be rewarded, only shame, and something like grief. I finally said yes, one word, but he understood. On the ride back to the office, Maya drove. I sat in the passenger seat. Ethan rode in the back with boxes of leftover workshop materials beside him. No one spoke for the first 10 minutes. Then Maya glanced at him in the rearview mirror. Caleb asked for your email. Ethan looked surprised. Why? He wants feedback on his next speech. Ethan stared out the window. Oh, Maya waited. Then she said, I told him he could send it through the program coordinator. Ethan nodded. Good. Maya's eyes returned to the road. Good answer. It was the closest thing to approval she had given him. He seemed to know it. When we returned to the office, Ethan carried the boxes upstairs without being asked. That evening, I stayed late again. But this time, it was not because I was afraid of my thoughts. It was because I was reading Caleb's thank you note to the mentorship team. It was written in uneven handwriting on lined paper. I read that sentence several times. Then I opened Ethan's probation file. There were still concerns, minor interruptions, defensiveness under stress, occasional visible resentment when corrected. Maya's notes were honest and unsentimental. But there were also changes, specific apologies, improved client communication, positive feedback from Jenna, Daniel's note about the Harbor House email, and now Caleb. I closed the file. Outside my window, Chicago glowed in the evening light. The snow had mostly melted, leaving wet streets and reflections of traffic signals in the pavement. For years, I had believed strength meant getting far enough away from the past that it could no longer touch me. But maybe strength was something else. Maybe it was standing close enough to the past to see it clearly without letting it decide who you became. My phone buzzed. A message from Maya. A second message followed. I looked at the words for a long time, then I typed back. Before leaving, I walked past the client support area. Ethan's desk was empty now, but something sat neatly beside his keyboard. A small sticky note from Jenna. I smiled faintly, less defensive. Keep that version. It was not a compliment most people would frame. But for Ethan Miller, it might have been exactly the right one. Because he was not becoming a different person all at once. He was learning, sentence by sentence, pause by pause, apology by apology, that the version of himself he had protected for years was not the version worth keeping. And as I turned off the hallway light, I thought about the boy at the community center standing up with shaking hands. I thought about Daniel learning to take up space. I thought about Jenna refusing to shrink. I thought about Maya protecting the culture we built. Then finally, I thought about 17-year-old Natalie, the girl on the stage. The girl who believed the laughter had ended something inside her forever. I wished I could tell her that one day, the boy who laughed would sit beside someone like her and teach him not to believe the laughter. I wished I could tell her that kindness would not undo the damage, but it could stop the damage from traveling further. And sometimes that was the first kind of justice that actually felt like peace. 3 months passed faster than I expected. Not because the probation period was easy. It was not. There were days when Ethan Miller still disappointed me, not in dramatic ways, not in ways that demanded immediate dismissal, but in small ways that reminded me change was not a clean line moving upward. Sometimes in team meetings, his face tightened when someone younger corrected him. Sometimes when a client challenged our recommendation, his first draft response still sounded more defensive than helpful. Sometimes when Maya gave him feedback, I could see the old pride rise in him like a reflex. But reflex was no longer destiny. That was the difference. He caught himself more often now. He apologized sooner. He asked more questions, and slowly, the people around him stopped bracing every time he spoke. That did not mean they trusted him completely. Trust was not a switch. Trust was a floor built one board at a time, and Ethan was still learning how not to step too hard. On the last Friday of his probation period, Maya came into my office with Ethan's final evaluation. She placed the folder on my desk and sat down without waiting for me to invite her. That was how I knew the conversation would be serious. "Well?" I asked. Maya crossed one leg over the other. "He's not ready for leadership. I know. He still has ego issues. I know. He still gets visibly annoyed when he's not the most experienced person in the room. I know that too." Maya leaned back. "But?" She looked toward the glass wall where the client support team was working quietly. Ethan sat at his desk, listening to Jenna explain something on her screen. He was not interrupting. He was taking notes. Maya watched him for a moment. "But he is trying when nobody is praising him for trying." That sentence stayed with me, because it was probably the most honest compliment Maya could have given. Not, "He's changed." Not, "He's a good man now." Not, "Everything is forgiven." Just this: he was trying when nobody was watching. I opened the folder. Maya's notes were detailed, as always. Defensive, status-sensitive, corrected after inappropriate comment to Jenna. Improved listening in client calls. Still tends to over-explain when challenged. Demonstrated accountability with Daniel. No retaliation or resentment observed after Daniel's promotion. Positive contribution to Harbor House follow-up. Strong empathy shown in written communication. Participated in mentorship event. Meaningful support to student Caleb. No performative behavior observed. Asked Jenna for feedback before sending client escalation email. Consistent performance. Still not recommended for management. Recommended for continued employment in client support with structured development plan. I read the final line twice. "You're recommending we keep him," I said. Maya sighed. "I hate that you're making me say it out loud." I smiled faintly. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." She sat up straighter. "Keep him. Not because he deserves a medal, not because he had a sad moment and cried in a conference room. Keep him because he's doing the boring part of change." "The boring part?" "The part where nobody claps." I closed the folder slowly. That was exactly right. Real change was not the confession. It was not the apology. It was not the emotional scene where everyone cried and music swelled. Real change was showing up the next Monday and not interrupting Jenna. It was rewriting the email. It was giving Daniel credit. It was letting a younger colleague teach you a system without making her pay for your embarrassment. It was choosing humility on an ordinary day, long after the dramatic moment had passed. Maya looked at me carefully. "How do you feel?" I looked through the glass wall again. Ethan was still listening to Jenna. "I don't know. That's allowed." I let out a quiet breath. I thought if he apologized, I would feel released. Then I thought if he changed, I would feel released. But it's not that simple. "No," Maya said. "It usually isn't. I don't hate him anymore. That's good. But I don't know if I forgive him. That's also fine." Her answer surprised me. Maya continued, "Forgiveness is not a performance review, Natalie. You don't have to complete it by Friday." I laughed softly despite myself. Maya's face softened. "You gave him accountability. You gave yourself the truth. That may be enough for now." Maybe it was. At 2:00, Ethan came in for his final review. He wore a gray sweater over a white shirt, no tie. His posture was different now. Still straight, still careful, but less like armor. More like a man who had spent 3 months learning that being respected felt different from being feared. Rachel joined us, along with Maya. Ethan sat across from me, hands folded on the table. For once, he did not speak first. I opened the folder. "Your probation period is complete." He nodded. "I know. Maya has submitted her evaluation." His eyes flicked toward Maya. She did not soften her expression for him. I appreciated that. You have met the performance requirements for the client support associate role, I said. Your written communication has improved. Your client follow-ups are clear. Your collaboration has become more consistent. He listened quietly. You have also shown progress in receiving correction without retaliation, acknowledging mistakes, and giving credit to others. His throat moved slightly. But, I continued, you are not ready for any leadership position. He nodded immediately. I agree. The answer came so quickly that I paused. You agree? Yes. He looked at his hands for a moment, because I'm still learning how not to make my insecurity someone else's problem. The room went silent. Maya's face changed almost imperceptibly. Rachel lowered her pen. I sat back. That was not a rehearsed interview answer. It was too specific, too unflattering, too true. Ethan continued, I used to think leadership meant being the person nobody questioned. Now I think that was just fear, or ego, maybe both. He looked at Maya. When Maya corrects me, my first feeling is still embarrassment, sometimes anger, but I'm starting to understand that the feeling is mine to manage, not hers. Maya said nothing, but she gave one small nod. For Ethan, that nod probably meant more than applause. I looked down at the contract on the table. We are offering you a permanent client support associate role. Ethan stared at the paper. For a second, he did not move. Then he looked up. Permanent? Yes. Same title? Same title. He let out a breath that was almost a laugh. Good. That surprised me. Good? I don't want a title I haven't earned. I studied him. There were many things I could have said then. Part of me wanted to say I was proud of him. Another part resisted that word. Pride felt too generous, too intimate, too final. So I chose something more accurate. That is the first leadership answer I've heard from you that I believe. Ethan looked down, and this time he did smile. Not the old smile. Not sharp, not strategic, small, grateful. I'll take that, he said. Rachel slid the contract toward him. He signed it. And just like that, Ethan Miller became a permanent employee at Brooks & Lane Creative. Not a manager, not a star, not a symbol. Just a man with a desk, a role, and a long road ahead of him. After the meeting ended, Rachel left first. Maya stood to go, then paused near the door. Ethan, she said. He looked up. Yes? Yes. Jenna is leading the client systems refresh next month. You'll support her documentation. A flicker crossed his face. Then he nodded. Understood. Maya watched him for one more second. Good. Then she left. Now it was just Ethan and me. He remained seated, looking at the contract in front of him. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then he said, I wrote something else. I looked at him. What? Not for HR. Not for the probation file. He reached into his folder and pulled out an envelope. My name was written on the front. He placed it on the table, but did not push it toward me. I don't expect you to read it now, he said. Or ever. I just needed to write it. I looked at the envelope. What is it? A letter to the girl on the stage. My chest tightened. Ethan's voice was low. I know I can't send it to her. I know she doesn't exist that way anymore, but I wanted to say what I should have said then. For a moment, I could not answer. The girl on the stage. He remembered her now. Not as a joke, not as a victim in some vague old story, as a person. I picked up the envelope. I'll read it when I'm ready. He nodded. That's fair. He stood, then hesitated. Natalie? Yes? Thank you for not becoming like me. The words struck something deep, not because they were dramatic, because they named the real victory. Not the company, not the money, not the title, not even the power to decide his future. The victory was that I had been given the chance to be cruel and had chosen not to. I looked at him. I became who I needed back then. He did not answer. He simply nodded, like he understood that the sentence did not belong to him. Then he left. That night, I took the envelope home but did not open it. I placed it on my kitchen counter, made tea, and stood by the window of my apartment overlooking the city. Chicago was restless below me. Headlights moved like rivers of light. Somewhere in the distance, a train passed, its sound low and lonely. I thought about my mother. She had died 4 years before Brooks & Lane became truly successful. She had seen me start the company, but not what it became. Sometimes I wondered what she would say if she could walk through the office now, see my name on the wall, see people listening when I spoke. I liked to think she would smile and say, I always knew, even if neither of us had really known. My phone buzzed. It was an email from Westfield High School. The subject line read, I almost deleted it. I had ignored Westfield invitations for years. Fundraisers, reunions, alumni newsletters. Every email went unopened or straight into the trash. But this one was from the current principal, a woman named Dr. Karen Whitmore. She explained that the school was hosting a leadership week for juniors and seniors and wanted to invite alumni who had built careers in business, science, public service, or the arts. They wanted me to speak at Westfield High School on the auditorium stage. I closed the email, then opened it again. For several minutes, I just stared at the screen. The stage existed in my mind as a place of humiliation, a place where my voice had died in front of hundreds of people. I had spoken in ballrooms, conference centers, corporate retreats, and investor meetings since then, but never there, never on that stage. My first instinct was no, absolutely not. Some places did not need to be revisited. Some doors could stay closed. Then I looked at the unopened envelope on my counter. A letter to the girl on the stage. Maybe some doors did not stay closed because we were healed. Maybe we opened them because we were finally strong enough to walk out differently. The next morning, I replied to Dr. Whitmore. 2 weeks later, I stood backstage at Westfield High School. The building looked smaller than I remembered. That was the strangest part. The hallways that had once felt endless were just hallways. The lockers were dented and ordinary. The cafeteria smelled exactly the same, which made my stomach twist unexpectedly, but even that feeling passed. The auditorium, however, still had power over me. When I stepped inside for the first time, the room seemed to breathe. Rows of seats, high ceilings, stage lights, a projector screen. My body remembered before my mind could stop it. My palms went cold, my throat tightened. I was 34 years old, wearing a tailored black suit, carrying a speech I had written myself, and still some part of me wanted to run to the bathroom and lock the stall door. Maya had come with me, not because I asked, because she knew. She stood beside me near the backstage curtain. "You can still leave," she said quietly. I looked at the rows of students filling the auditorium. Some were whispering, some were looking at their phones, some were laughing with friends, some sat alone. One girl near the front clutched a notebook to her chest and stared at the stage like it terrified her. I saw myself in her immediately. "No," I said. "I'm staying." Maya smiled. "Good." Dr. Whitmore introduced me with the kind of polished enthusiasm principals use when they want students to understand that someone impressive is standing nearby. Founder and CEO. Award-winning company, Chicago business leader, mentor, speaker. Applause filled the room. My legs felt strangely light as I walked onto the stage. For a second, the old memory overlaid the present, the laughter, the edited slides, the ugly caption. Ethan in the back row. I looked toward the back of the auditorium, and there he was. Ethan. Not seated among students, of course. Standing near the side entrance, half in shadow, wearing his work ID from Brooks and Lane. I had not known he was coming. Our eyes met. He did not smile. He simply nodded once. I understood then. He had come not to be part of my speech, not to be forgiven publicly, not to share the stage. He had come to witness what he once tried to take from me. My voice. I stepped to the microphone. For a moment, no sound came. The room waited. My heart pounded. Then I looked at the girl with the notebook in the front row, and I began. "When I was a student here," I said, "I thought success meant becoming so impressive that nobody could hurt me anymore." The room quieted. "That is not true." Some students looked up from their phones. I continued. "People can hurt you, even after you work hard, even after you do everything right, even after you earn your place. Sometimes people will laugh because they are afraid of caring. Sometimes they will mock ambition because they do not have the courage to build anything themselves." I paused. My voice did not shake now, but their laughter is not evidence. It is not proof that you are small. It is only proof that they do not know what to do with someone who is still becoming. The girl in the front row stared at me. I looked across the auditorium. I used to believe kindness was soft, something nice people talked about when nothing serious was at stake. But I was wrong. Kindness is not weakness. Kindness is power with discipline. The room was completely quiet now. Kindness is when you could humiliate someone, but you choose accountability instead. Kindness is when you could take credit, but you say the name of the person who had the idea. Kindness is when someone quiet speaks and you protect the space around their voice. I looked toward the back of the room. Ethan's eyes were fixed on the floor. I turned back to the students. "And if you are the person being laughed at, listen to me." My voice grew softer. "One day, the room will move on. They always do. The people laughing may forget what they said by Monday, but you may carry it for years." I swallowed. "So be careful what you decide about yourself in the moment someone else is being cruel. Do not let their worst moment become the story you tell yourself about your worth." A few teachers were watching me with unusual stillness now. Perhaps they understood there was more beneath the speech than a motivational message. Perhaps they did not. It no longer mattered. "This world will reward talent," I said. "It will reward confidence. It will reward speed, charisma, status, and sometimes even arrogance." I paused. "But if you become powerful, I hope you remember this. The way you treat people who cannot help you is the clearest evidence of who you are." When I finished, the auditorium stayed silent for one long second. Then applause rose. Not laughter, applause. It started in the front rows and moved backward until the whole room filled with it. I stood under the lights, breathing through a feeling I could not name. It was not triumph exactly, it was not revenge. It was something quieter. A door opening inside me. After the speech, students lined up to ask questions. Some wanted business advice. Some asked about college. One asked whether being a CEO was lonely. The girl with the notebook waited until the others left. "My name is Emma," she said softly. "Hi, Emma." She looked down at her notebook. "Did people ever make fun of you for trying too hard?" The question hit me with such tenderness that I had to take a breath. "Yes," I said. "They did." "What did you do?" I thought of all the answers I could give. Work hard, ignore them, prove them wrong. But those answers felt too simple. So I said, at first I believed them. Then I found people who didn't laugh when I cared. And eventually I became one of those people for someone else. Emma nodded slowly. Then she said, I want to do something big, but I'm scared people will think I'm weird. I smiled. Most people who do something big are called weird first. She smiled back, small, hopeful. After she left, I found Ethan standing near the hallway outside the auditorium. He looked like he had been waiting but was not sure he had the right to. Maya stood a few feet away, giving us space while pretending not to monitor everything. Ethan looked at the auditorium doors. You were good up there. Thank you, he nodded. I never clapped for you back then. The sentence was quiet, heavy. I know, I said, his jaw tightened. I should have. For a moment, the hallway disappeared. I saw the 17-year-old boy laughing in the back row. Then I saw the man in front of me, older, ashamed, trying to place one small stone on the side of repair. I looked toward the auditorium. You can start now. He understood. The doors were still open. Students and teachers were still inside, talking, gathering bags, moving between rows. Ethan stepped into the doorway, and he clapped. Not loudly at first, just once. Then again. Then again. A few people glanced over, confused. Maya looked down to hide a smile. I stood beside him. For some reason, that quiet applause reached deeper than the loud applause from the students. Because it belonged to the missing moment. The moment that should have happened 17 years ago. It did not erase the old laughter, but it finally gave the memory a different sound. On the drive back to the office, I did not say much. Maya drove again. Ethan sat in the back seat, quiet. The city moved past the windows in winter light. Halfway downtown, he said, I read Caleb's new speech. Maya glanced in the mirror. And? He's better than he thinks. I smiled at the window. Most people are. That evening, after everyone left, I finally opened Ethan's letter. I sat alone in my office, the city glowing beyond the glass, and unfolded the pages carefully. His handwriting was neater than I expected. The letter began simply. I stopped there for a moment. Then I kept reading. He did not ask for forgiveness. That was the first thing I noticed. He did not explain his childhood. He did not blame peer pressure. He did not say he had changed, or that he was ashamed, or that he hoped I could move on. Instead, he wrote to the girl I had been. He told her she had deserved better. He told her the laughter had been wrong. He told her work had mattered. He told her the scholarship should have been hers to win or lose honestly. He told her that the boy in the back row had been cruel because being admired felt easier than being decent. And near the end he wrote, I covered my mouth with one hand. This time I cried. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just enough for the girl on the stage. Just enough for the bathroom stall. Just enough for every version of myself that had kept going without an apology, without proof, without anyone saying, you deserved better. When the tears stopped, I folded the letter and placed it in the same folder as the old flash drive. For years that folder had held evidence of harm. Now it held something else too. Not erasure, not forgiveness, but truth. And truth, I realized, was sometimes the closest thing to freedom we get. The next morning I arrived early, as always. The office was quiet. The coffee machine hummed in the break room. Dawn light spilled across the floor. The city outside was still waking up. I walked past the conference rooms, past the framed awards, past the photographs of my team. Then I stopped in front of the wall. I had chosen those words because of pain. I kept them because of hope. At 8:22, Ethan stepped out of the elevator. He wore his employee badge, carried a plain notebook, and held 2 coffees. One for himself. One for Jenna, I realized when he placed it carefully on her desk with a sticky note that said, then he sat at his desk. No announcement, no performance, just work. A few minutes later, Daniel arrived. Jenna followed. Maya walked in at exactly 8:30, looked over the support area, and gave Ethan a brief nod. He nodded back. The day began like any other day. Phones rang, emails arrived, clients needed things, people made mistakes, people corrected them. Someone laughed near the printer, someone asked for help. And for the first time, I understood that this ordinary morning was the real ending. Not the apology, not the speech, not the applause. This. A workplace where a quiet person could speak. A room where credit could be returned. A company where power had rules. A life where I no longer needed to become cruel to prove I had survived cruelty. I walked into my office and opened the blinds. Sunlight spread across my desk. For years, I had imagined that if I ever faced Ethan Miller again, I would teach him a lesson. I thought the lesson would be about regret, or justice, or how it felt to be small. But in the end, the lesson was about kindness. Not the soft kind, not the easy kind. The kind with boundaries, the kind with consequences. The kind that says, I remember what you did. I will not pretend it was okay, but I will not become the thing that hurt me. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and began the day. Outside my office, the company moved around me, alive and imperfect and still becoming. Just like Ethan, just like me. And somewhere inside, 17-year-old Natalie finally stepped off that stage. Not running, not crying, not alone. This time, she walked away to applause.